an airport versus an easy trip across the Potomac to National. I love all of those responses. I'm not going to repeat them here. But I'm worried that if we move in too quickly, let's say to Memphis, I should back up and say I was Speaker of the House in North Carolina. And I would consider it a personal failure on the part of state leadership if they have to call in federal resources to do their job beyond what they do every day. And that's promoting joint task forces. I've seen ATF, DEA, FBI. I've been in the briefing rooms at 3 o'clock in the morning about to go and do a 55 no-knock warrants on bad people. You all do that every day, and thank God that you are. It looks like we should plus it up in a few cities. I'd rather use the money to deploy National Guard to just continue to leverage what you're already doing well. And I compliment you because I've got to believe it's a lot of these joint task forces that have increased the apprehension and charging rates. So thank you for that. But do you agree that at the end of the day, if we're going to have a sustained impact on crime, whether it's Memphis or any other city, that we've really got to enable, empower, and continue to support the men and women on the ground there every single day?
100%.
Thank you. I think that your cost-benefit mind needs to go into, if I'm about to deploy this many National Guardsmen to a city, what does that cost? And what would that look like if we were plowing that cost of deployment into ongoing, I believe, joint task force, which are working very well. They're working well in North Carolina. So I'd like you to look at it. Now I'm going to move on. The Safer Communities Act, can I get your commitment to get an update? Maybe we could even take a trip out to West Virginia to see how we're doing an extraordinary job of NICS background checks. People are getting them in record time, but we are taking a few guns away from people that probably shouldn't be able to buy that day. Would you agree with that characterization?
I would love to have you out and anyone else on this day is to West Virginia to see that.
I'd like to bring some of my colleagues to see it's working. We had people on my side of the aisle saying it was going to be awful, it was going to result in mass confiscation of guns. Not true. They were wrong. This bill's making a difference. I also want to talk about the behavioral health and other components in granting. I know in North Carolina things are going well. I want to make sure that that flow is going out there because the tragic events in North Carolina and Charlotte, the stabbing, I spoke with one of the family members yesterday, I think that we have to recognize that we have magistrates that have a revolving door policy, no doubt about that. And they should be held accountable if they're releasing dangerous people. But I also think that some of the problem is that we simply don't have a place to send people, particularly with respect to behavioral health. We have got to continue to, every law enforcement officer I've ever spoken with says, look, I've got law enforcement officers seconded to an emergency room because I've got somebody with no place to send them. I don't have a bed upstairs I can send them to. I don't have a behavioral health facility. We've got to provide more ways to detain people that are a risk to themselves and a risk for the community. And I really do believe the Safer Communities Act is a good framework for doing that. That's only a comment. Section 702 is going to come up in April of next year for renewal. Do you believe it should be eliminated and not reauthorized?
No, sir. It needs to be reauthorized.
Can I also get your commitment maybe to come back over and review some of the controls that are in place and other things? So hopefully we won't have the drama leading up to April. We can actually come here and get consensus on why you've got the checks and balances in place and why we should do it. Just remove any chance that we're going to run into that cliff narrative next year. Can I get your commitment on doing that?
You have it, sir.
Thank you. I want to talk very briefly on, and the chairman's given me a gavel, but I promise not to go over more than 2 minutes. But that's why I chose to be last, so I could have this discussion and actually get to some facts versus agendas and clickbait that we'll almost certainly see going forward. Tell me a little bit about the rationale behind the change in stance in recruiting. I also understand there may be a reduction in the academy timeline. Just give me some thinking about where you are on recruiting, retention, training, et cetera.
So recruitment is through the roof. We've doubled up month over month our applicants to be 1811s or federal agents, intel analysts. So the recruitment is going wonderful. What we have to do is figure out a way to get creative because the BFTC timeline is an 18 to 20 week program. And what we've done to address the openings we have for 1811 brick agents is we opened it up to the interagency and said, hey, do you at Secret Service or DEA or ATF want to come over? You guys went through FLETC. You guys were cops or military officers. You're law enforcement. So we created a shortened bridge program of 6 weeks at Quantico that if you want to come over and be an FBI agent, you can do so. There's transfers all the time. We just made it easier. And we're also recruiting police officers who might not have a college degree. But in my opinion, that does not disqualify them from serving our community. So we're welcoming them. It's a rigorous application process. It's just one item. But we are changing the timelines based on the needs of the country, but not jeopardizing quality.
I'm glad you mentioned that. I heard someone almost a throwaway line that you were hiring people without a college degree. Most of them have had basic law enforcement training, all the kinds of certifications. You're talking to somebody who didn't achieve my 4-year degree until I was 37. I'd like to think that I brought some things to the table, and I think that those people, the mere comment, I think is inappropriate for somebody considering this to think that they're a lesser person because they don't have a piece of paper. I wanted to get back to the last thing that I will talk about. I'll follow up with some questions for the record. Thank you, incidentally, for consistently being responsive to any inquiries I've made to you. But on the Kirk shooting, I do believe that that Senator Schmitt's numbers are right. There seems to be a disproportionate number of voices on the left that are celebrating the assassination of a CEO or celebrating the assassination of someone in Mr. Kirk's case that I disagreed with probably about half of his positions. But I felt like he was a good voice in engaging young people, and that's a start, as long as we can do it civilly. And then I also just went back online because I've hammered on this committee multiple times. I just went online and I found in Pinterest that even today you could order a T-shirt that says ACAB 13.12, which translates to all cops are bastards. Or if you don't like that shirt, you can go get an F the Cop shirt at the same website, on a location on Pinterest. There is clearly a problem with some of the voices of the left, and I'm not necessarily saying any members of Congress, that need to tamp it down. Having said that, within 24 hours of Mr. Kirk's shooting, we had the guy that does the podcast for the War Room and another guy who's denied the Sandy Hook shootings say we're at war. Now, how on earth, and I do believe it's a smaller number, but it's a number that has an influence. How on earth are we de-escalating the situation and with the tensions as high as they were last week with going out and saying we're at war? I'm not asking you to respond to this question. I'm just saying that there are people out here on our side of the aisle that still need to look in the mirror. Even if you agree that it's a lower number, bad is bad no matter how many numbers they are. And that kind of rhetoric and that kind of mobilization makes your job more difficult and puts us in a position where we're not being as productive as you want the FBI and state and local law enforcement to be. I'm finished. I just want to thank you for your service. I want to thank you for your concise answers. And I am thoroughly impressed with the fact that you have sat in that chair for over 4 hours without a break. So with that, we're, on behalf of the chair, want to thank you for being here today. And also, I assume, are we leaving the record open for any period of time for 1 week? The record will be open, left open for 1 week so that you may have questions for the record. Mr. Patel, thank you for being here
Thank
today.
you, Mr. Chairman.
Meeting's adjourned.
Under your leadership, the FBI has apprehended several most wanted fugitives and secured the extradition of senior leaders of the Central American gangs like MS-13. Now, it's well understood that your predecessor left you an FBI infected with politics. I'm going to provide examples of that today, including making public new whistleblower records. At your nomination hearing, I made public records that whistleblowers provided me about Arctic Frost. Arctic Frost was the FBI case opened and approved by antitrust Trump FBI agent Tebow. Arctic Frost then became Jack Smith's elector case against then citizen Trump and now President Trump. These new records show that Arctic Frost was much broader than just an electoral matter. The case was expanded to Republican organizations. Some examples of the group that Ray FBI sought to place under political investigation included the Republican National Committee, Republican Attorney General's Association, and various Trump political groups. In total, 92 Republican targets, including Republican groups and Republican-linked individuals, were placed under investigative scope of Arctic Frost. On that political list was one of Charlie Kirk's groups, Turning Point USA. In other words, Arctic Frost wasn't just a case to politically investigate Trump. It was the vehicle by which partisan FBI agents and Department of Justice prosecutors could achieve their partisan ends and improperly investigate the entire Republican political apparatus. So today, Senator Johnson and I are making these records public for the entire country to see, and I hope a lot of people are interested in seeing what government can do when various agencies have a political agenda. My investigative work has also exposed the political way in which Peter Navarro was investigated and prosecuted. When FBI agent Tebow found out that Biden's DOJ would prosecute Navarro, he said, "Wow, great." That's a quote, unquote. Through whistleblowers, I've obtained a audio recording of Special Agent Giagardina and Special Agent Sebastian Gardner's delivery of a subpoena to Navarro. I'm making that audio public today. In a court document filed by the Department of Justice, Navarro's interaction with the FBI was unfairly described as, quote, unquote, the word combative. That intervention with Navarro was just as the justification to later aggressively arrest him. Then we get to the Clinton Annex and the Durham Annex. The Clinton Annex showed that the Comey FBI had evidence necessary to complete the Clinton investigation, the one about her mishandling of emails and classified information, but the FBI never did its job because it never reviewed the evidence at that time. The Durbin Annex showed that the Clinton campaign had a plan to falsely tie Trump to Russia, yet the Comey FBI failed to investigate that information. Instead, the Comey FBI used the discredited Clinton campaign-funded Steele dossier to advance crossfire hurricane against Trump. Director Patel, thanks in a large part to you, both annexes were finally declassified. That may be history, but it's history to make sure we don't repeat the history of the past. And the people ought to be concerned when the weaponization of government is used in this way, whether it's done by Republicans or Democrats. Last Congress, I made public an FBI document called 1023 form that alleged a bribery scheme with the Biden family. To date, the FBI has never answered Congress whether they investigated the text messages, the audio files, and the financial records referenced in that 1023. Whistleblowers have provided my office with 2 additional FBI 1023 documents. These documents memorialize statements from FBI sources. These 2 new 1023 documents are from separate FBI confidential human sources during different years. So in total, we now have 3 different FBI confidential human sources providing information about the Biden family and potential criminal conduct. Today, Senator Johnson and I are releasing these records. Let me say this for the partisan media, the people that are supposed to be policemen of our Republican form of government. We aren't saying the allegations are true. We want to know what the FBI did to fully investigate their veracity or lack thereof and what they concluded. Let's put this matter to rest one way or the other. Starting with my chairmanship, I've given one example after another of disgraceful partisan weaponization by federal law enforcement. Since the Trump administration took power, many FBI agents have been removed. The removal included agents and prosecutors who became partisan weapons that lost their way, and I've made records public to prove it. And many of my whistleblowers were aggressively retaliated against by some FBI agents who were subsequently fired. One FBI whistleblower publicly said of these terminations, quote, ensuring that they no longer work at the FBI isn't retribution, it's responsible leadership, end of quote. Which brings me to my final and favorite topic, whistleblowers. In August, 10 of my FBI whistleblowers secured compensation agreement because of your leadership, Director Patel. It included a mix of reinstatement to the FBI, reinstatement of security clearances, and monetary compensation. At the beginning of this month, another of my FBI whistleblowers got their job back. All told, across government agencies, almost 20 whistleblowers have received fixes to their retaliation. Today, you'll get a lot of grief from some members of this committee, but in the short amount of time you've been director, you've corrected whistleblower retaliation, increased transparency more than any other FBI director I've seen, whether that FBI director was appointed by Republicans or Democrats. And I've been around here more than anybody else on this committee. I yield to Senator Durbin.
Thanks, Chairman Grassley, for holding this oversight hearing during a critical period in the history of the Federal Bureau of Investigation. During my 4 years as chair, I held 4 hearings with then FBI Director Wray. As a reminder to Republicans who claim the Biden administration weaponized the FBI, President Biden retained Director Wray, a lifelong Republican who was President Trump's nominee for the office. After his second election in an unprecedented move, President Trump forced out Director Wray and nominated Kash Patel, arguably the most partisan FBI director ever. Director Patel came to the FBI with a political mission, and he spelled it out in writing in detail. He wrote, "Government gangsters, quote, the rot at the core of the FBI is not just scandalous, it's an existential threat to our Republican form of government," end quote. And with the power of his office and the blessings of the president, he attacked the FBI with a vengeance. Mr. Patel had falsely claimed the FBI, quote, was planning January 6th for a year, end quote. He even went so far as to produce a song by the January 6 rioters who violently assaulted police officers in the Capitol. He compiled an enemies list of public servants he called government gangsters, like former FBI Director Mueller, whom Patel called, quote, an utter swamp creature. Former Trump officials who served with Mr. Patel warned us he would weaponize the FBI to protect the president's allies and target his critics. And indeed, Director Patel has already inflicted untold damage on the FBI, putting our national security and public safety at risk. Since January 20th, the Trump administration has engaged in an unprecedented purge of FBI officials. As we heard from highly credible whistleblowers, Mr. Patel was involved in directing this purge even before he was confirmed, despite his sworn testimony to this committee. It began with terminations and forced retirements of all 6 nonpartisan career officials who run all 6 branches of the FBI, assistant directors. Since then, at least 18 of the 53 special agents in charge of FBI field offices have been removed, along with many other senior officials. Individual agents have been targeted for termination simply due to the work that they were assigned, such as January 6th investigation. In fact, according to former acting FBI Director Brian Driscoll, in a lawsuit filed last week, Director Patel made this very plain, telling Driscoll personally, quote, that his own job depended on the removal of agents who worked on the cases against the president, end quote. And even though he knew, quote, the nature of summary findings were likely illegal. At the same time, Director Patel has installed MAGA loyalists as political appointees in key career positions, including conspiracy theorist Dan Bongino as FBI Deputy Director, the first time in the history of the FBI that this position has not been held by a career FBI agent. Director Patel has also reportedly initiated loyalty test, requiring dozens of officials to sit for polygraph exams and answer inappropriate questions about whether they've made negative comments about him personally. Of course, as is often the case in the Trump administration, the rules apply to thee, but not to me. As we understand it from highly credible sources, key members of Director Patel's senior executive team and others on the 7th floor had disqualifying alerts on their initial polygraph exams. Well, how did they survive? They survived because of a personal waiver by either the director or the attorney general to remain employed by the Bureau. Understand the context here. Political operatives in key positions, given the routine FBI polygraph exam, failed and had to receive waivers to continue their positions. They were lucky to keep their political appointments. They were. But the 5,000 career civil servants the director has so far forced out of the Bureau's ranks were not offered that same courtesy. 5,000. This mass exodus has created a disastrous brain drain, particularly in the fields of cybersecurity, counterterrorism, and counterintelligence. For example, my office has received information indicating that cuts to the Bureau's cyber division will cut personnel by half, despite the ever-increasing threats posed by adverse foreign actors. The brain drain is exacerbated by Director Patel's misuse of remaining FBI personnel and resources to focus on other priorities of this administration. According to reports, the 25 largest FBI field offices have been ordered to divert 45% of their agents from their primary missions to work on the mass deportation of immigrants. Just as concerning is Director Patel's plan to hire fewer qualified agents by removing the college degree requirement and reducing new agent training at Quantico from 18 weeks to just 8. So we have a brain drain and a significant watering down of training. Quite a record, Mr. Patel. As recently fired special agents and others have warned, fast-tracking inexperienced and improperly trained people into critical national security jeopardizes the Bureau's ability to effectively protect America. Director Patel himself had no training or life experience for this position. The result of that incompetence is staggering. For example, after Attorney General Bondi publicly stated in February that the Epstein client list was, quote, sitting on my desk right now to review, that's what she said on Fox, Director Patel diverted more than 1,000 FBI personnel from their critical missions to work on 24-hour shifts reviewing over 100,000 pages of Epstein-related records. These personnel were instructed to flag any records in which President Trump was named. But that review ended in an unsigned memorandum from DOJ and FBI stating simply, there is no incriminating client list, close quote. Director Patel still has not responded to my letter from 2 months ago asking about his role in this cover-up. On the day of the horrific shooting of Charlie Kirk at Utah Valley University, Director Patel again sparked mass confusion by incorrectly claiming on social media that the shooter was in custody, which he then had to walk back with another social media post. Mr. Patel was so anxious to take credit for finding Mr. Kirk's assassin that he violated one of the basics of effective law enforcement. At critical stages of an investigation, shut up and let the professionals do their job. Notably, Director Patel recently forced out Special Agent in charge of Salt Lake City, Mayim Saeed, a counterterrorism expert with 20 years' experience, who would have led this high-profile investigation. The men and women who serve at the FBI and the American people deserve a director who has the ability and the character to restore the Bureau to its place as the preeminent law enforcement agency. I want to close on a personal note. I came of age in the 1960s. We experienced a number of horrific assassinations, including President John Kennedy, Senator Robert Kennedy, and Dr. Martin Luther King. We are going through a similar period of division and political violence. All of us in public life, on both sides of the aisle, have a responsibility to bring down the temperature and to work to unite the American people. Let's be clear, Republicans are not Nazis and Democrats are not evil, as Mr. Patel has claimed. Democrats are not responsible for the murder of Charlie Kirk, and Republicans were not responsible for the murder of Melissa Hordman. Our political opponents are not our enemies. We are all Americans, and we should be working together to keep the American people safe and protect their constitutional rights. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Would you please stand so I could swear? Do you affirm that the testimony you're about to give before this committee will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? So help you God. Please be seated, and you can give your statement now.
Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Ranking Member Durbin, and members of the committee. It's an honor to be here with you today as the 9th Director of the FBI. I want to providing a briefing into the tragic assassination of Charlie Kirk. It's important that this FBI is transparent as possible without jeopardizing investigations. Charlie Kirk was shot at 12:23 p.m. on September 10th. I think this timeline is critically important. Less than a day later, the FBI, at my direction, released the first set of images of the suspect that we captured based on our analysis on the ground. Later that evening, while conducting extensive interviews and cell phone analysis, and also flying out evidence response teams and hostage rescue teams and evidence tacticians who were collecting evidence in live time and flying them back to Washington, D.C. in our laboratories for immediate analyses, we were able to extract video from the campus feed. And at my direction at 8 p.m., in partnership and promise to working with the public to bring this fugitive to justice, we released a newly, never before seen video of the suspect. We also released new enhanced photos of the suspect. A few hours later, that suspect was in custody, pursuant to the interrogation of the suspect's own father, who stated, "When I saw that video that you released, I recognized it was my son. and I confronted him, and he was handed over to lawful law enforcement authorities. That is the FBI working with the public as I promised, being transparent and providing critical information along the way in the manhunt for the suspect and suspects involved in Charlie's assassination. We received over 11,000 tips in the first 24 hours alone. We received 16,000 submissions to our digital media enterprise and tip lines. That is a large number of material to go through. I want to thank President Trump and the Attorney General, Pam Bondi, for their unwavering support and commitment of resources to this and all investigations. I also want to especially thank our colleagues in Utah, the Governor's Office, DPS, and the sheriffs out there. State and local law enforcement partnership has been a cornerstone since I took over at the FBI, and it was no different here. And our teams in Salt Lake City, our SACs out there across the country, our lab technicians in Quantico who raced to complete the evidence analysis so the public could have the answers they need. These people worked through the night without sleep for days on end. They are to be commended. They are not to be attacked. And many, many, many more people I don't have time to thank here today. But I do want to thank the American people especially. The mission of the FBI is for them and with them and by, with, and through them. And it's that mission and that ethos that I brought to this investigation and so many others, and that's why that suspect is in custody. We cannot do our job without the American public and credible reporting in the media, and that's why Tyler Robinson is in custody today, about to face charges. The last time I appeared before this committee was in January for my confirmation hearing. I told you then that if I were confirmed, I would provide and do everything I can to provide a safe and secure America. I promise to provide the courageous men and women of the FBI the tools and resources they need to crush violent crime and defend the homeland. I pledge myself to commit to full transparency, oversight, and accountability so we could restore the public's trust in the FBI. And that's exactly what I've done. Under this administration, the FBI has arrested more than 23,000 violent criminals. That's more than twice for the same time period from last year alone. 23,000, more than twice from the same time period last year. We've taken over 6,000 illegal firearms off the streets. That number is an exponential increase. We've identified and located more than 4,700 child victims. More than 4,700 child victims have been found by this FBI. That is a 35% increase from the same time period last year. 1,500 child predators have been arrested. That's a 5% increase from the same time last year. 300 human traffickers have been arrested. That's a 10% increase from the same time last year. Over 350 members of Tren de Aragua, foreign terrorist organization, have been arrested, and we have 42 ongoing cases. That is a 250% increase from the same time last year. Those are just some of the things the FBI is doing differently and better because we are leading the mission to crush violent crime and defend the homeland. We have also arrested captured four top 10 fugitives from the FBI's top 10 most wanted list. To put that in perspective, that's the same amount I've captured in 7 months than my predecessor did during the entirety of the Biden administration. Those are real results, and the credit is to the men and women at the FBI. We've been able to achieve these results because the FBI recognizes violent crime doesn't just happen in Washington, D.C. That's why one of my first decisions as a director was to get the people, the Bureau's professional staff, out to the field. And we've done that with great speed. And every single one of your districts and states has received a plus-up of FBI personnel, agents, and special operators to the tune of almost 1,000. We did that because crime had unexpectedly and unacceptably exploded across the country. In fact, one of the stats that the American people should thank the FBI the most for is we are on track to have the lowest murder rate in modern American history. The lowest murder rate by double-digit percentages. A major factor in the drop of this violent crime is the FBI's flagship Operation Summer Heat. We use this initiative at the direction of the President and the Attorney General, surging resources to our major and mid-major cities across America, conducting intelligence-based operations to target the worst of the worst, to target the gangs, to target the transnational organizations, to target the TCOs, and to target the drug trafficking cartels. And we have taken them out city by city. There's a lot of work left to be done, but we're off to a great start. Just ask the citizens of Seattle, Miami, Memphis, Charlotte, Chicago, and so many more places, specifically New Orleans and Nashville alone. there has been an increase in the number of violent crime arrests by an average of 250% for each of those cities. And there has been a drastic reduction in crime across the board in mid-major cities across this country, thanks to the men and women of the FBI. How are we doing that? We are attacking the drug epidemic. We've seized nearly 1,000 kilograms of meth and cocaine off the streets of America. We've taken over 1,600 kilograms of fentanyl off the streets. Maybe one of the greatest achievements we have this year, 1,600 kilograms of fentanyl. That's a 25% increase from the same time last year. To put things in perspective, that's enough fentanyl to kill a third of the American populace, 115 million Americans. We're also going after the companies that manufacture these precursors overseas in places like mainland China and their cutting agents. In fact, this month in Cincinnati, we announced groundbreaking charges aimed at the individuals and businesses responsible for flooding these opioids and their precursors and cutting agents into the streets of America. And for the first time that I can remember, we are charging these businesses and enterprises, not just in America, but in mainland China, and seizing their operational necessity to have money by seizing their cryptocurrency wallets. We're also equally important to protecting the homeland. We know we have a no-fail mission. We're committed to keeping our nation safe from terrorism, cyber attacks, and foreign adversaries. Whether stopping threats inspired by foreign terrorist organizations or lone wolf actors or sponsored by hostile nation states. This year, we've already made nearly 60 counterintelligence arrests. 60 counterintelligence arrests this year alone is a 30% increase from the same time period last year for the CI work at the FBI. I'm proud when we can share our successes, such as when an espionage charge was brought against an active duty U.S. Navy sailor caught spying for the People's Republic of China. But I want the American people to know the FBI is protecting the homeland from foreign adversaries in a way that will never make the news, and a lot of the good work that they do will never be able to discuss in this setting. We're working on cyber threats. We're attacking malware infrastructure, going after ransomware attackers, delivering a new partnership with the private public sector engagements we've taken with the companies who are attacked by these foreign adversaries and nation-state actors and individual enterprise rings from around the world. We're combating Salt Typhoon, Vault Typhoon, Flax Typhoon, and so many other ransomware and cyber threats this nation faces. We're also arresting people such as Tajik national in Brooklyn, who is suspected of sending tens of thousands of dollars to support ISIS. We're going after the new form of what I refer to as modern-day terrorism in America, 764 crimes that involve harming our children by going after them online, causing self-mutilation, suicide, sexual abuse, and steering them in the wrong direction. Currently, we have 3,500 international terrorism investigations. Specifically, we have in this country 1,700 domestic terrorism investigations, a large chunk of which are nihilistic violent extremism, NVE. Those who engage in violent acts motivated by a deep hatred of society, whatever that justification they seem is. The FBI has seen a 300% increase in cases opened this year alone versus the same time last year. In the last couple of months, the FBI secured a guilty plea for a man in Tennessee who attacked an energy facility with drones and explosives. We secured the indictment of a violent Sinaloa cartel faction leader in Chicago on narco-terrorism charges. Our folks in Sacramento collaborated with domestic and international partners to secure a guilty plea for a leader of a transnational terrorist organization who solicited the murder of federal officials. But the Bureau's job is not done. I'm committed to this transparency. Mr. Chairman, you alluded to our work with Congress. To date, in the 7 months that I've been FBI director, we have produced 33,000 pages to the United States Congress, 33,000 pages. Just to put that in perspective, my predecessor in his 7-year term issued 13,000 pages to Congress, and his predecessor in his 4-year term issued 3,000 pages to Congress. I've issued 33,000 pages in 7 months, and we're going to keep going. I'm dedicated to restoring the trust that the public has and needs in the integrity at the FBI, and it's being done every day by the men and women of the FBI. Now, I know that there's a lot of talk about Epstein, and I'm here to testify that the original sin in the Epstein case was the way it was initially brought by Mr. Acosta back in 2006. The original case involved a very limited search warrant or set of search warrants and didn't take as much investigatory material it should have seized. If I were the FBI director then, it wouldn't have happened. The search warrants were limited to small time periods to include 2002 to 2005 and 1997 to 2001. Mr. Acosta allowed Epstein to enter in 2008 to a plea and non-prosecution agreement, which then the courts issued mandates and protective orders legally prohibiting anyone from ever seeing that material ever again without the permission of the court. The non-prosecution agreements also barred future prosecutions for those involved at that time of those individuals. Still, this administration, at the direction of President Trump, has done more to turn over all the credible information we are legally able to do so, and we will continue to work with Congress to achieve that end. Under the direction of the President, thank you for your support for our mission to working to jointly deliver transparency and congressional oversight to the United States. Lastly, I want to close with the President's initiative here in Washington, D.C. as an example of what we're doing around the country. And I think our next city is Memphis. 21,000 arrests in D.C. with our federal partners, a huge decrease in violent crime, 60% decrease in gun crimes in Washington, D.C. in the last month, 74% decrease in carjackings in Washington, D.C. in the last month, 53% decrease in homicides in Washington, D.C. in the last month. The drugs are disappearing, people are freely walking around the states, and we're restoring the nation's capital to its glory. That work is through the interagency process that the FBI is proud to be a part of, and the initiative spearheaded by President Trump and the Attorney General. And perhaps most notably for investigations in Washington itself, it was the intelligence that the FBI gathered through our source network here in D.C. that helped us identify the suspects in the horrific murder of the D.C. intern Eric Tarpinian. We're proud to be a part of that investigation. We're proud to put the resources to bear of the FBI. And in closing, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee and Ranking Member Durbin, I'm honored to be the 9th director of the FBI. I'm not going anywhere. If you want to criticize my 16 years of service, please bring it on. Over to you.
I've observed when whether it's Republican or Democrats want a yes or no answer, that the witness and the senators talking over each other. So I thought what I'd do this time, rather than have that happen, if there's something you don't get a chance to answer because of the demeanor of a Republican or Democrat senator, before we, when we get done with that questioner, I'd give you a chance to fill in if there's something you didn't get a chance to say. Since 2019, I've sought greater transparency about Jeffrey Epstein and the government handling of the matter. I've continued to investigate during this Congress. Director Patel, was Jeffrey Epstein an intelligence asset for the United States government or the foreign government? And if so, which agencies or governments?
Mr. Chairman, I can only speak to the FBI as the director of the FBI, and Mr. Epstein was not a source for the FBI.
Okay. Would you commit to providing my office with all classified, non-classified records relating to the Epstein matter?
I will commit to providing all records I'm legally permitted to do so under the court orders.
It seems to me that I accept your answer to my question, but the broader intelligence community ought to answer these questions as well. Victims deserve an answer. Regarding the initial FBI 1023 document that I made public last Congress, that document mentioned 1, text messages, 2, audio recordings, and 3, financial records that allegedly proved a bribery scheme with the Biden family and foreign interests. Regarding those records, did the Ray FBI make any effort to determine whether they existed? Did the Ray FBI make any effort to obtain those records?
Not to my knowledge, Mr. Chairman.
Since this matter hasn't been fully investigated, the FBI has an obligation to the public to do exactly that and figure out why it wasn't investigated. Next question. I've done a lot of oversight relating to sexual misconduct by the FBI agents. In fact, I believe this is something I discussed with Ray, one of his appearances before this committee. According to the FBI Inspection Division, it opened nearly 300 investigations based on sexual misconduct referrals between 2017 and 2024. According to whistleblowers, the Biden-Ray FBI totally dropped the ball on this question. One credible accusation of sexual misconduct is too many, of course. Are you committed to reviewing the Bureau's policies to ensure responsible responses to credible allegations of misconduct, that they're swift and adequately protect victims?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Relating to a similar subject, during child crimes and sexual misconduct related investigations, are any private sector companies less than cooperative with you? What improvements in information sharing need to be made to catch those criminals?
Mr. Chairman, we can always do better with our private sector companies. I've reached out to the leaders of most of them, asking them to provide more material so that we can be responsive and take legal action and protect the youth of this country. I'm happy to discuss, possible legislation that we can do to allow for these companies to continue.
Yeah. Say, maybe 1 inch up on the microphone.
Sorry.
I think you're close enough, but I think it's just a little bit lower. When you raise your head, it's difficult to hear. Director Patel, since 2021, I've raised concerns about the Biden administration failure to properly vet Afghan evacuees. Director Gabbard informed my office that as of August 2022, approximately 1,600 evacuees located in the United States had ties to terrorism and other derogatory information. That's why I and many others have opposed bills giving blanket approval. Are you aware of what steps your predecessor took to investigate these evacuees? And what steps have you taken to investigate them? And what, if any, national security concerns still exist?
Mr. Chairman, I can't speak to the steps my predecessor took, but I will make sure we do a sweeping review and get back to you on that. As far as the Afghan refugees and evacuees, as during my tenure, we are going through the databases to make sure that no known or suspected terrorists enter this country to harm our nation. And also, as my resolve as FBI director, one of the first acts we undertook was a manhunt of one of the Abbey Gate bombers and leaders in that crime spree that killed 13 brave Americans. And within 2 weeks, we caught one of the leaders of the Abbey Gate bomber and brought him to justice here in 2 weeks from Pakistan. And so my commitment to you on Afghanistan in all matters is complete and without border.
Yeah. Through my and other investigations, we found that the Biden administration lost thousands of undocumented children. We never heard a peep from senators wanting to help find them, even after I invited them to do so. In September 2025, the Trump Health and Human Services announced the creation of an interagency crime coordinator cell to find these and other missing children. That interagency group reportedly includes your agency. What resources and personnel have the FBI assigned to this new interagency effort, and what steps have the FBI taken to assist in locating missing children that the incompetent Biden administration lost?
Protecting our youth is maybe the top priority for the FBI. As it specifically relates to your question, Mr. Chairman, as I stated, we've surged resources not just to this cell, but across the nation to our FBI's field office to locate children who have been trafficked, who have been victims of sexual abuse. And we have located 4,700 children in the 7 months since I've been FBI director. And that is a 35% increase from the same time period last year. And we're not stopping, and we're committed to doing that work on our tribal lands as well. And we are finding victims of child trafficking and child abuse every county and every district, and we're not going to stop.
Okay. As I mentioned during my opening, I'm releasing documents with Senator Johnson about Arctic frost. Specifically, the documents show its scope expanded to include 92 Republican organizations. From evidence that I've seen, it looks to me like another political hit job against Republicans. What steps has the FBI taken to make sure improperly predicated investigations and weaponizations like this don't happen again?
The simple answer, Mr. Chairman, is the FBI will only bring cases that are based in fact and law and have a legal basis to do so. And anyone that does otherwise will not be employed at the FBI. We are doing a prospective and retrospective analyses of individuals who may have weaponized the department and the agency. And as I've committed to you during my confirmation hearing and my conversations with you, this FBI will not be weaponized anymore in either side of the aisle.
In June of this year, I raised concerns about the FBI's use of restricted access and prohibited access systems. According to the FBI, quote, when search teams that exist in a prohibited access status cases are searched in Sentinel, the particular search will receive a false negative Sentinel search response, end of quote. Clearly, this is not only affects FBI agents, it impacts congressional requests and court cases, and the Biden administration used it to thwart oversight. How are you ensuring that restricted access and prohibited access files are produced to Congress during court cases? And have you identified any Biden family records in restricted and prohibited status?
As I've committed to you with my transparency initiative, whether it's restrictive or prohibited, every single thing we can legally provide to Congress, we will. We've also restructured how these restrictive and prohibited cases are labeled and provided access to more people in the chain of command so that more people have knowledge of what these restricted and prohibited cases are, including myself and the deputy.
Do you commit to providing any records that are available?
I do, sir.
You publicly said that your team, quote, found a room that Comey and others hid from the world in the Hoover building full of documents and computer hard drives no one had ever seen or heard of. That's a quote from you. I've received a whistleblower disclosure that the room contained some information kept outside the FBI record keeping. I also have been informed via a whistleblower disclosure that the room included materials related to Special Counsel Mueller, former Director James Comey, and other documents maintained outside of the FBI. Has the FBI now reviewed and analyzed those records? Has the FBI properly recorded the documents? And these records are clearly responsive to my, as well as my colleagues' congressional requests. What steps have you taken to ensure all responsive records are produced to Congress? That has to be my last question.
What's supposed to happen is leadership at the FBI is supposed to, pursuant to the Records Act, correctly store these records at our Information Management Division, IMD. In this room, we found a plethora of hard drives, computers, hard documents, soft documents that were not so recorded, a voluminous amount of information. So we are continuously processing that information. So A, we subscribe to the Records Act and commit that those records will be kept permanently at the FBI. 2, we are reviewing those materials. A lot of those materials are related to ongoing investigations. And 3, we are on a rolling basis providing Congress the documents that we can, and we will continue to do so.
Okay, thank you very much. Senator Durbin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Director Patel, in addition to the extensive purge of nonpartisan career FBI official reports indicate that dozens of remaining officials have been subjected to polygraph exams to test their loyalty. My understanding is that approximately 40 officials have been asked to sit for a polygraph during your administration, and several have been asked whether they have ever made negative comments about you. Director Patel, FBI agents pledge their loyalty to the Constitution of the United States, not you personally. What is the basis for requiring polygraph exams of your workforce and asking them if they've made negative comments about you?
I don't know what reports you're referring to, Ranking Member, and I reject any reporting that has false information in it, so I'm not going to respond to that. As far as polygraphs go, generally they are always and always have been utilized at the FBI to track down those that leak sensitive information and have unauthorized disclosures to the media, and we will continue to use them to ensure the integrity of the FBI.
Did any individual on your senior executive team, the director's advisory team, or who serve in the positions on the 7th floor receive disqualifying alerts on their polygraphs?
Senator, I'm not going to get into the personnel discussions that were had on a polygraph. Those are private discussions, and many of them relate to ongoing investigations.
Did you or Attorney General Bondi provide any individual with a waiver so they could remain employed after they received disqualifying alerts on their polygraphs?
I'll have to get back to you.
You don't remember that?
No, sir. My priority is protecting the American public, not getting into the weeds of polygraphs.
And to have a decent memory when you come before a committee.
I'm happy to talk about all the good work the men and women of the FBI are doing, including provided the lowest crime rate in American history. If you want to talk about how to protect the citizens, Chicago has seen a 30% reduction in its murder rate because of the men and women of the
And you
FBI.
take credit for that?
I'll happily do that.
You
The
take credit?
interagency partners and the men and women of the Chicago PD have never been more
Include
powerful.
local law enforcement, please.
Have you ever seen my testimony across this country where I always lead with our interagency partnerships with state and local law enforcement? It is the pillar of what I am doing. And on the 7th floor, for the first time in FBI history, I have installed police officers and sheriffs right on my 7th floor to report to us every day what's going around the country on the street level, because that is a priority of the FBI and is the only way we are going to work. I don't take credit for anything, but I will defend the men and women of the FBI and the cops that help us get it done.
You should. Director Patel, to your knowledge, did a whistleblower ever make a disclosure to Attorney General Bondi indicating that the New York field office was withholding Epstein-related records?
I'm not familiar with that whistleblower.
You know that there was such a whistleblower?
I'm not familiar with that whistleblower.
In response to the blowback she received, Attorney General Bondi also pushed the FBI to review approximately 100,000 Epstein-related records on an arbitrarily short deadline in March, and the FBI was directed to flag any documents that mentioned President Trump. Nothing came of that review until July, when DOJ and FBI released an unsigned memorandum stating there is no incriminating client list. Why was this July 7th memorandum unsigned?
Would you prefer I've used AutoPen?
Why was it
The
unsigned?
memorandum had the insignia of the Department of Justice and the Federal Bureau of Investigation. And in our effort to secure transparency for the American people, because the 3 prior administrations had not done so, we conducted an exhaustive search of everything related to the Epstein cases, and we produced what was legally and permissibly able to be produced to Congress and the American public.
So
And
did
there's
you
a congressional
did you-
subpoena, and we're continuing to do
You
so.
personally direct that investigation so that you would sign such a,
Did I personally direct what investigation?
of the Epstein records for any reference to President Trump?
Again, you are citing reporting that I think is baseless. We conducted an investigation of the Epstein case files pursuant to the direction of the President of the administration to provide all credible information, and we are working with Congress pursuant to a congressional subpoena to turn over all the documents we can. All
at-
individuals.
Who
were
at
cited.
DOJ and FBI was responsible for its drafting and conclusions?
Many individuals at the Department of Justice and the FBI are
There was
responsible.
no lead person?
The Attorney General leads the Department of Justice, and I lead the FBI.
So the Attorney General was responsible for that?
The Attorney General leads the Department of Justice.
Director Patel, much like you, Deputy Director Dan Bongino was a conspiracy theorist who built a lucrative career making inflammatory and unsubstantiated statements about the FBI that would be disqualifying in any administration that cared about nonpartisan law enforcement. For instance, Mr. Bongino called the placement of pipe bombs outside the DNC and RNC headquarters on January 6, quote, an inside job, and went on to say this was a setup. I have zero doubt, and whoever goes into the FBI, you better get an answer about why. Director Patel, you and Deputy Director Bongino are now leading the FBI. What is the evidence to suggest the pipe bombs placed outside of the DNC and RNC on January 6 were an inside job?
I appreciate the opportunity to discuss Director Bongino's mine record. So many on this committee and the media jettison our 31 years of public service.
Can
prior
you
to
answer the
taking-
question, sir?
I'm answering the question. You're questioning the integrity of the Deputy Director of the
Asking
FBI
you
and
if
mine.
you found
And
any
I'm going to
evidence.
answer the question.
I'm
The pipe bomb
asking-
investigation is ongoing, and I'm not going to discuss the
Ongoing?
details of the pipe bomb investigation. Mr. Bongino was a Secret Service agent for 15 years, a police officer for 5. I served this country in multiple administrations for 16 years. We were also private citizens, and we are now back in government service. And what we have the ability to do is set aside our personal beliefs to deliver the mission of justice for this country, and we're doing it day in and day out. And I find it disgusting that everyone and anyone would jettison our 31 years of combined experience that is now at the helm of the FBI, delivering historic results at historic speeds for the American people.
So you have no evidence?
I got a lot of evidence, and I'll give it to you when I can.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. There's a New York Times story this morning about Chris Meyer. As I understand it, he was your personal pilot, at least for some period of time. Mr. Meyer has quite a record himself. Flew over 350 hours as an Air Force pilot on 3 aircraft types in Afghanistan. Mr. Jardina, another former FBI agent, a 1999 graduate of U.S. Naval Academy, commanded 100 Marines in combat during the 2003 invasion of Iraq, participated in several firefights, followed up with 2011 deployment as a reservist to Afghanistan, where he interrogated senior Taliban officials. It appears that you terminated these 2 agents. Why?
I'm not going to get into personnel decisions that we made.
So you're not accountable for your decisions to take people who've served our country so admirably and terminate them without any cause?
That's a one-sided story. Anyone that has
Well,
been
then
terminated from
so
the
tell
FBI,
your-
generally
tell your side of
speaking,
the story.
failed to meet the needs of the FBI and uphold their constitutional duties. And you providing a one-sided story from your perch is absolutely disgraceful, because the men and women of the FBI deserve better. And your attack on the current leadership of the men and women of the FBI is equally disgraceful, because now you're attacking the leaders that are our brave SACs in
Let
the
me tell you
field
what's
who are
disgraceful.
doing the job that this
Disgraceful.
country needs.
It's
And we will
disgraceful.
continue to do it.
Excuse me, it's disgraceful when Mr. Meyer and Mr. Jardina, who served our country so well, are terminated apparently because of the rants of a broadcaster.
That is your
all?
opinion. It is not a fact.
Well, it's certainly my opinion I can back up with fact. Let me ask you to explain the situation in Baltimore, if you will. Did you read the story about the termination of the project in Baltimore?
Which story?
764 Group?
Sorry. Which story?
764 Group, the Baltimore agents were investigating. Are you familiar with that?
No, sir.
Well, I'm not going to go into detail. It would take too long to do it. But apparently that this group, 764, a nihilistic, violent extremist group, seeks to blackmail children to perform vile acts on a camera, under investigation by Baltimore, which was terminated by you. I'd like you to respond in writing, if you will, as to the circumstances of that termination.
Sure. Our operations against NVEs, as you're referring to, has been historically high, and we've taken down multiple NVE rings, including 764 rings, who are harming children and causing them to be mutilated and
Last
commit
question,
suicide.
can you explain why you are eliminating the requirements for a college degree for your agents?
I appreciate the opportunity to address that. You said in your opening statement, we are reducing the training requirements at Quantico. We are not. We are expanding them. You are referring to an 1811 crossover program, because I believe the men and women of places like the DEA, the ATF, and the Marshal Service and the Secret Service who want to work at the FBI should deserve that opportunity in a shortened, abridged program, which we provided. We are also keeping the 18-week BFTC as is traditionally at the FBI. So we're not reducing any requirements. We are increasing those that we bring into the FBI.
Did you change any of the requirements on college degrees?
We are allowing police officers who have served for a number of years to come into the FBI who did not obtain the requisite college degree to apply to be federal agents, because we feel they have the street level experience we need to conduct this mission.
I yield, Mr. Chairman.
I have to respond to this business about you not treating employees properly, because I served under the previous administration when Democrats willingly turned a blind eye to Biden administration retaliation against my whistleblowers. They didn't get due process when their careers and lives were upended. I'm talking about people like Dina Perkins, Jeffrey Veltri, Timothy Dunnan were removed from their positions. Several whistleblowers were reported that they targeted FBI employees for their political beliefs by suspending and revoking security clearances. One FBI whistleblower said that Perkins, Vetri, Dunnan, and other FBI leaderships were, quote, responsible for what happened to me and my family, ensuring that they no longer work at the FBI isn't retribution, it's responsible leadership. Another whistleblower that is a registered Democrat said they spoke out against abuses in security clearances processes committed by FBI senior leaders, particularly Veltri and Perkins. Then Perkins and Dunnan suspended their security clearances and put them in unpaid leave. I'm going to put some more examples like this in the record so I don't take up a lot of time for my colleagues. Senator Graham.
Thanks, Senator Graham. Welcome to the committee. The numbers sort of speak for themselves. You've done a lot in a small period of time. So all those folks out there making this happen, thank them for me.
Well, sir.
As to how to be an FBI agent, you've made a decision that local law enforcement folks, people who have served in law enforcement without a college degree are able to apply now. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Makes sense to me. So experience out in the field might be as valuable as a college degree, believe it or not. Venezuela. We're blowing boats out of the water in the Caribbean because they're connected to international narco-terrorist groups. Is that correct?
Yes, that mission is being led by the Department of Defense, sir.
Okay. What legal authority do we have to do that?
Sir, I would defer the questions on legal authority to the Attorney General and the department.
Fair enough. Do you believe that Maduro runs a narco-terrorism state in Venezuela based on?
I believe based on the intelligence and prosecutions and investigations we are currently running, a large portion of the cocaine that exits out of South America, its origination point is in Venezuela, and using transshipment points through Haiti, they're using the navigable waterways in the Caribbean to the end state delivery, which is the United States of America, and we will hunt down every single one of those narco traffickers with the authorities.
There's
we
some
have.
actual indictments of Maduro as an individual for being involved in that. Is that correct?
Senator, I think you're referring to the DEA indictment on that one.
Right. So I guess the point is, would it be fair to say that Venezuela is a good candidate to be labeled as a state sponsor of terrorism under U.S. law?
Senator, from my perch, we will provide the intelligence necessary for anyone who meets the threshold to be a state sponsor of terrorism, and this administration has
I
expanded
think
it.
they are, so we'll be going down that road. China, on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being nothing, 10 being great, how is China helping with the fentanyl problem here in the United States?
Under this administration, we have taken, as I highlighted the Cincinnati case, the precursors are the problem. The fentanyl is the end state that kills American
Well,
citizens.
the precursors are made in China, right?
They're made in China. And so for the first time in a decade, I had a call with my counterpart in the MPS, the Ministry of Public Services, to attack the precursor chemical companies and have those chemicals
Is it
labeled.
too early to rate the success?
We have indicted multiple businesses in China. We've also cut off the transshipment points of those precursors. They switched. Once we got on their track about their delivery routes to the Mexican drug cartels directly, they started going to India. We called the Indian authorities and they shut down those transshipment points. So we're continuing to work with our
So
partners
China
overseas.
is helping, would you say?
They are starting to help, and we are hoping under this administration's leadership we can get more of
Let
their
me
help.
know, in the coming months if that continues, because if they are helping, that's a good thing.
Yes,
I think
sir.
we need to celebrate the breakthrough. If they're not, that would be a bad thing. So after the assassination of Charlie Kirk, there seems to be one refrain from everybody, and that's about the effect of social media. Do you believe that social media is one of the instruments radicalizing America and inciting violence?
Well, it's not. My belief is based on the data, and the data shows that social media is wildly out of control when it comes to
You're
radicalizing.
dead right. So what did you just say? This guy's the FBI director. He says that social media is wildly out of control. Now, free speech, we all agree with that, but you can't yell fire in the theater, right?
Yes, sir.
Free speech doesn't allow you to go online and groom a child for sexual.
No, it does not.
Okay, free speech doesn't allow you to go on the internet and basically incite somebody to kill another person, right?
Absolutely not.
So if it's illegal offline, it should be illegal online, agreed? Whatever the law is.
Yes, sir.
Just because you're online doesn't give you a get out of jail free card.
No, sir.
So if a parent is worried about a child being bullied on a website, what rights do they have under U.S. law?
We have to balance the rights, as you said, Senator, of free speech versus those that encroach
Is there
upon
any
violence.
law that can shut down one of these sites for bullying children or allow sexual predators on the site?
We are able to attack certain sites on the dark web. When it comes to the open internet infrastructure system, we have to reach a threshold to attack a company's position that only subscribes to violence.
Can the parents sue that company?
They can.
They can?
They can sue not the social media companies.
That's what I'm talking
They
about.
can sue the companies.
No, I'm talking about the social media company that gives lives to this behavior.
No, you're referring to Section 230, sir.
Would you advocate a sunsetting of Section 230 to bring more liability to the companies who send this stuff out?
I've advocated for that for years.
All right. We need to do this, folks. These companies are taking content that it makes you sick, that could get you killed, get you poisoned, and there's nothing we can do about it under our law. A person can do about it because of Section 230. So if your child is being sexually groomed online or bullied online, and you go to the social media company and ask them to take it down, they refuse, you have like zero rights. How many images of sexually exploited children are purveyed every year on social media sites?
The number is astronomical. And Senator, if I can just add one step to that analysis.
Please.
It's not just what's on social media that is quote unquote real. It's the introduction of artificial intelligence and
Right.
generative AI that is creating even more child sexually abused material and even more sexually violent acts online and mimicking people.
Would you say that the way social media is structured today, really no accountability, 36 million images in 2023 of sexually exploited children, that this is a public health hazard?
It is.
Would you say that it's a mental health problem, particularly for younger people?
It absolutely is.
Do you agree that some of these sites are designed to be addictive?
I think not only are some of these sites designed to be addictive, unfortunately, the reality is some of these sites are designed to generate income, and many people are generating income based on this illegal trade.
Do you think it's now time for America to deal with this problem?
I'm all in, I have been all in, and I'm happy to work with Congress to do so.
Well, I tell you what, having the FBI director all in is great news for me, and I hope the committee will respond and that we'll be all in, trying to fix a problem that I think is doing a lot of damage to our country. When it comes to John Bolton, was there new evidence involved in the raid on his home?
Sir, that investigation is very much ongoing. As you know, there was a raid of his house pursuant to a legal
Was there a
search
warrant obtained to go in?
Absolutely, sir.
Okay. All right.
We're looking to have that search warrant unsealed
Okay.
at the
Yeah,
appropriate
I
time.
think that would be good, quite frankly. In December 2023, Director Wray said he sees blinking lights everywhere regarding to foreign terrorist threats against our homeland. How would you characterize the state of threats to our homeland by foreign terrorist groups?
Foreign terrorist organizations have adapted and started utilizing online platforms, and so is the FBI. And so while they are adapting and expanding how they harm our country, we have as well. They have not stopped. There's been a resurgence in places like West Africa and elsewhere of foreign terrorist organizations, and also the newly emboldened drug trafficking organizations in Mexico. It's going to take a whole of government approach to get.
Does
to-
Hezbollah fall within that group?
Yes, sir.
So Hezbollah is involved in not only terrorism, but narco-terrorism?
Yes, sir.
So do you consider Hezbollah a threat to the United States?
Absolutely.
All right, finally, Do you have enough people
Sorry.
to do all this? Do you need more people? You're involved in a lot of things, and the numbers speak for themselves. You have FBI agents helping here in Washington, D.C. You have FBI agents helping in illegal immigration. That's good. You've got a chance here to tell us if you need more people. Seems to me that threat level of this country is pretty high right now. You got thousands of domestic terrorism cases. How many are being investigated?
I think 3,500 off the top of my head.
3,500, okay. Anyway, it seems your plate's pretty full. I would urge you to get with your people, and if you think you need more people, now's the time to do it. It would be a shame to miss an opportunity to plus up the FBI if the threats justified it. Will you look?
I will look, sir.
Okay, but are you comfortable you have enough people right now?
Right now, I'm comfortable with the reallocation of agents and personnel outside of Washington, D.C. and plussing up states like South Carolina in double-digit numbers, and I'll get back with my team on this one.
Thank you for your service.
Senator Whitehouse.
Boy, is my timing good.
It is very good.
Director Patel, welcome.
Thank you, sir.
When you were here for your confirmation, we talked about your so-called enemies list. It appears to me that there have been adverse actions of various kinds taken against about 20 of the 60 people on your enemies list. You've been in office for 7 months. At that rate, you've got 14 months until you've hit all 60. Can you explain that?
Again, that is an entirely inaccurate presupposition. I do not have an enemies list. You can continue to characterize it as you wish. The only actions we take, generally speaking, for personnel at the FBI are ones based on merit and qualification and your ability to uphold your constitutional duty. You fall short, you don't work there anymore.
Well, there was a list. You don't like it to be called an enemies list, and it had about 60 names, and about 20 have had an adverse action. So those are, I think, pretty clear facts. Let me move on to your grand jury testimony, which we also talked about when you were here. I think you indicated that you understood that a witness in the grand jury is free to discuss afterwards whatever they told the grand jury. And you then went on to suggest, saying, I can't go into court orders granted by the DC District Chief Judge, and you want me to violate a court order. In those remarks, you fairly plainly suggested that there was a court order of some kind that somehow restricted or limited your ability to discuss your own testimony to that grand jury. Since then, that chief judge that you mentioned, Judge Boasberg, has written, and I'm quoting him here, Federal Rule of Criminal Procedure 6E allows witnesses like Patel to divulge the contents of their testimony, meaning that nothing was preventing him from doing so before the committee. Can we confirm here today that there is no court order of any kind that limits your ability as a witness before the grand jury to discuss your own testimony to that grand jury?
We can confirm that pursuant to my action, that grand jury testimony has been released, the transcript.
Let's, in what forum was it released, may I ask?
Publicly.
Okay, we'll check on that. The FBI does background investigations. In the case of a U.S. attorney, Jeanine Pirro, it has come to light that in a civil proceeding, that Fox News executives, prior to her confirmation, called her, I'm quoting here, a reckless maniac who makes, quote, insane comments, and said, I don't trust her to be responsible, and noted her penchant for what they called random conspiracy theories on weird internet sites. My question to you is, did that turn up in her background investigation?
For any background investigation, Senator, we do not discuss those publicly. And for every background investigation, when there's an adjudication, it is not made by me. It is made by the career professionals who run the inspection division and background check system.
Do you know if that information was found? You see, we're an oversight body here, and there are really three possibilities here. One is that the FBI background investigation didn't find that stuff. That's worth noting because these investigations, full field background investigations, are supposed to find that stuff. That's possibility one. Possibility two is that the FBI did in fact find that information and then did not report it to the administration or to the committee. And the third is that you found it, you reported it to the administration, and they went ahead with her nomination knowing that she had been described as a reckless maniac who made insane comments, who wasn't trusted by colleagues to be responsible, and who had a penchant for random conspiracy theories on weird internet sites. Are you saying that this committee does not have any authority or reason to look into which of those things is true?
This committee can look into anything it wishes. I'm telling you that the background investigations that are done by the HRD division are done by career individuals. They do not report the details of those to me. They adjudicate those independently and individually. That's how it's always been done.
What happened during the pause of FBI background investigations that was alleged in the complaint against you and the FBI by the FBI agents who were terminated? On February 12th, Emil Bovee directed the FBI, quote, to pause any FBI background investigations of Trump nominees until Patel was confirmed, which happened on February 20th, is the general description of what they alleged. Why, do you know, were background investigations paused? Was it so material like this could be scrubbed out of them? And have they been resumed without that pause fully and normally after your arrival on February 20th?
I can speak to the time period since I got there. Background investigations have been ongoing across the board at the FBI.
Why was the pause, do you know?
I was not there.
Wasn't explained to you when you got there? Oh, by the way, boss, they've had an 8-day pause on background investigations. You think that would be something that would be explained to you at some point?
Again, I leave it to the men and women at the HRD division to run background investigations. I do not interfere with them.
I get that. But what I don't get is whether you were told about that pause, and why would you not be told about that pause?
I don't recall that, sir.
All right. The allegation also relates that part of the employee review of senior staff was whether or not they voted for Kamala Harris in the 2024 election. Since when is who you voted for a proper question for agents to be asked?
I don't know what allegation you're referring to, Senator. If it's from an ongoing matter in litigation, I can't discuss that. But what I can discuss is I can only speak to the FBI's background investigations. There are other background investigations conducted across the government. I can only speak to
So
mine.
just to clarify, I'm not talking about the FBI full field background investigations. I'm talking about internal employee reviews for promotion, for termination, for job actions of various kinds. And my question to you is it now the policy of the FBI to ask agents who they voted for, and since when is who agents voted for a proper question for the FBI to ask?
Taking those in reverse order, it's not a proper question, and it's improper to allege that I'm doing that. And also, at the FBI specifically, under my leadership, we do not ask who you voted for. And just one correction for the record, if I may, Senator, it's Security Division that runs background investigations, not HRD.
Okay. I'll accept that correction. And in the event that we cannot locate your grand jury transcript, just expect a question for the record that will give you the chance to either provide that transcript again if it had been previously provided, or to make the statement that Grand Jury Rule 6E allows you, to the best of your recollection, truthfully, about what it is that you told that grand jury. Do you understand that?
That's why I wanted the transcript released, and we'll get it to you, sir.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Chairman.
I think I want to take an opportunity when we hear about your political weaponization to remind my Democratic colleagues that what's happened the last decade, federal law enforcement, intelligence community, even when Trump was president, has thrown everything at him. They've even gone after his associates and Republican Party organizations. One investigation after another, one prosecution after another. I use examples you've heard me already say today: Crossfire Hurricane and Arctic Frost. These were all built on defective foundations of political bias. And then we released the Clinton Index and the Durham Index and the FBI's failures to investigate. So I've been acquainted with this because I've been trying to get to the bottom of it, and we had to get a new FBI director to get all this information, Senator Cornyn.
Director Patel, welcome. Thank you for your willingness to serve in this very challenging position. How many people work for the FBI today?
Approximately 36,500, give or take.
I've always wondered whether an organization that big and that diffused all across the nation was actually capable of being managed. Have you experienced any surprises in terms of the, as the director, in terms of your management of the organization?
In my experience, Senator, the leaders in the field are supposed to lead. So we have empowered and we've changed the structural operation of the FBI to empower SACs in the 56 field office, 55, 56 come 1 October, to lead the mission. We've also empowered the respective assistant directors and operational directors to lead the mission. That is how you manage 36,500, 37,000 people. No one or two people can do it. And that's been the transition, is the power structure is being pushed out to the field operations.
It sounds like a very practical way to approach it. And how is morale?
Morale, when I travel around the country, in my experience, has never been higher. The FBI and the police officers that we worked hand in glove with across this country are excited to do the work. And the stats that I'm citing are no achievement of mine. The stats that I'm citing in the 7 months that I've been there, such as a 42% increase in cyber arrests alone this year, is because the men and women at the FBI have been empowered in the field. They want to do the work. They're getting the opportunity to do the work. And with our great partners in the respective states like Texas, and where we just returned a top 10 most wanted fugitive in Cindy Singh, are getting the ability to make those prosecutions a reality.
By the way, Senator Durbin was asking about polygraphs. Aren't polygraphs a standard part of the standard test given to people with security clearances across the intelligence community
They are.
as a condition to maintaining your security clearance?
I believe they are.
Speaking of intelligence, one of the things that I've wondered about over time is, the FBI is a premier law enforcement agency in the nation, but you also have other important responsibilities in counterintelligence. And there's been different debates or people wondering whether, including me, whether that's an appropriate role for the FBI to play. And I guess the most challenging. Part of that is if it's not at the FBI, where would it go? But can you, given your background, I know as working on the HPSI and your intelligence background, can you talk a little bit about what you think about the counterintelligence role of the FBI agents and how that's working, whether you think it's performing the way it should, or whether there are other changes or reforms need to be made in order to improve its functioning? As you know, the threats from our adversary nations are just proliferating every day. So what do you think?
The espionage activities of our adversaries have never been so high, and I think the counterintelligence mission is properly housed within the FBI because we've invested with those authorities for Congress, and I believe that mission set is working. And if I can, sir, since January 20th of this year, the FBI has made 55 arrests on the counterintelligence mission alone. That's a 30% increase in CI arrests from the same time year-to-date last year. We've arrested 33% increase in PRC counterintelligence arrests, an 83% increase in Russia counterintelligence arrests from the same time last year, then a 60% increase on Iran counterintelligence arrests from the same time period last year. So we are already on total exceeding the entirety of the number of arrests from the previous year on counterintelligence matters across the board. And in my opinion, the FBI is the only agency that can do it. Now, we work with the interagency to do it, and we need them, but we have the mission set.
Thank you. You know, sometimes I wonder whether we sort of repeat the way we do things because we've always done it that way. And I'm getting up to building up to this issue of the narco trafficking and what President Trump has ordered the Defense Department to do in terms of to take out some of these transnational criminal organizations that are importing poison into the United States and responsible for killing tens of thousands of Americans, maybe hundreds of thousands of Americans over time. Do you think a law enforcement model for dealing with these narco traffickers is adequate to deal with the threat? Or do you think we need to start thinking about this in maybe new and different ways? Obviously, we're not engaged in a war per se, although it is a war metaphorically. And the law enforcement model seems to be not working from the standpoint of dealing with the volume of the threat and the magnitude of the threat. Do you think we need to start thinking about how do we deal within constitutional legal parameters to deal with this problem in a different way to be more effective in protecting the American people?
Absolutely. And the way to analogize this and why I've advocated for the designation, and I'm thankful that the Trump administration has designated these cartels and narco traffickers as foreign terrorist organizations, is because we must treat them like the foreign terrorist organizations post 9/11. We must treat them like the Al-Qaedas of the world because that's how we're operating. And just treating them with law enforcement capabilities alone was wholly insufficient to wipe out the targets in their entirety. They always had the next man up philosophy. If you take out the leader, they got 10 guys behind him. But in order to eliminate, and that's the key, eliminate the drug trade, and eliminate the pouring into this country of narcotics, we have to use our authorities at the Department of War and the intelligence community to go after the threat like we did terrorists when we were manhunting them. And now we have that ability, and we're seeing that in live time, whether it's on the strike on the boat or going down into Mexico and working with our Mexican authorities with these intelligence assets to say we've located not just the person in charge, the cadre in charge, but the entire network. And we are now able to dismantle that entire network. It's going to take time. The manhunt after 9/11 took some years, and this is going to be a years-long mission.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned the counterterrorism mission because we've had a lot of experience, the U.S. government writ large, with dealing with terrorism in the Middle East and elsewhere. And obviously, some of our friends and allies, like Mexico, for example, are very sensitive about sovereignty and being able to control what happens on their territory. But yet we're beginning to see more and more cooperation, as you point out, in that regard. And so in your opinion, has the counterterrorism model, have the lessons learned by the U.S. government writ large, are they being aggressively applied? Are there other things we need to do to make sure that those skills, those lessons learned are applied more broadly to the threat of narco trafficking?
I can only speak to the FBI. We are applying all of them to our counter, the CT mission set to the CN mission set, and we're using the new authorities given to our intelligence community partners in the Department of War to combine these collective efforts and in a new way, meeting together and creating an interagency process that gets after the threat dynamic. And whether that's in a kill operation, a capture operation, a surrender operation, or a host nation takedown, like we did with the counterterrorism mission sets in Afghanistan, in Iraq, in Pakistan, and elsewhere, we are applying that to the drug traffickers in Mexico and Venezuela and Colombia.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We have seen too much political violence in this country. We all know that. Just last week, Director, your friend Charlie Kirk was gunned down on a college campus. I'm sorry for your loss. In Minnesota, only 2 months ago, a madman took the life of my friends, Melissa and Mark Hortman, shot Senator John Hoffman and his wife Yvette a combined 17 times. And evidence indicates that he would have killed a lot more if law enforcement hadn't intervened. Just last month in my state, we were again shook to the core when little kids were shot down through stained glass windows in Annunciation Catholic Church in Minneapolis. And while the victims weren't politicians in this case, they were 6-year-olds and 8-year-olds, the manifesto that the shooter left behind was political. But in the words of your own federal law enforcement, this person was an all-purpose hater. Went after blacks, Hispanics, the president, Muslims, Jews, nearly everyone. And this happened during the first Mass of the year for these kids. They were excited to see their friends, meet their new teachers, and 2 children, 8-year-old Fletcher Merkel, 10-year-old Harper Moisky, were murdered. 21 other people injured, some of the kids, 18 kids, severely. Fletcher was just starting 3rd grade. He loved his family, his friends. He loved fishing and cooking, in his dad's words, any sport he was allowed to play. Harper, the other child, we celebrated her life this Sunday, thousands of people. Her parents described her as bright, joyful, and a deeply loved 10-year-old whose laughter, kindness, and spirit touched everyone that she knew. We've heard the words of young children who were saved because 12-year-olds laid on top of them, or a kid with disabilities who was paralyzed, whose teacher pulled him out of the wheelchair, threw him under the pew, and laid on top of him. We do thank the local FBI director and the local U.S. Attorney's Office for their work in both of these cases, the Hortman case and this. But I did want to focus on one local law enforcement moment that I'm not sure has made with all the news going on in Minnesota. When the first 911 call, and you've heard about other places where this waited and waited, the first 911 call was made at 8:27 a.m. The first officer was on the scene just 4 minutes later, local Minneapolis police, at 8:31 a.m. The Chief O'Hara, shared with me the actual numbers. Listen to this. Over 20 people were in ambulances just 14 minutes, all of them, after the police got on the scene. 14 minutes after the first call. Tourniquets, stretchers, and they got them all to Hennepin County Medical Center or Minneapolis Children's Hospital. And I think it is worth looking at what happened there, because one of the dads whose daughter was severely injured, still in the hospital, that I met on Sunday, told me that there is absolutely no way his beautiful daughter would have survived if police hadn't been there. So it is worth looking at for all of us. So my focus on behalf of these parents, because I promised I would do this on Sunday, was just to figure out how we can do anything to stop this from happening again. So expanded background checks, ghost gun bans, every shooting is different. Raising the minimum age to purchase assault weapon, even if we're not going to ban them. I favor banning them, but that's one idea that's out there when so many of these shootings are people who are 18, 19, 20, 21. The one at Annunciation Church was 23. Both shooters in Uvalde and Buffalo had just turned 18 when they purchased the assault weapon bans. I'm not saying any one of these things would prevent every single shooting, but I really ask everyone to look at these. We also need to tackle social media, and I really did appreciate Senator Graham's questions. I think we have to protect free speech and not engage in censorship. But for years, I have supported repealing Section 230, which was made when these companies were little companies starting up in garages. And I think it is one way to get at making this better environment online and preventing violence. So my first question is on the assault weapon ban. Do you think that would be helpful in reducing gun deaths, Director?
Senator, if I may, I want to answer the question, but thank you for your remarks, especially it relates to my friend Charlie, and I share and relay my remarks, my sentiments to you. Minnesota has suffered untold tragedy in these last few months, and whatever creativity we can use to eliminate even just one shooting, one horrific death, I am in favor of engaging with Congress fully to do. I don't have the answers. I don't know what will eliminate it in its entirety, but I'm willing to engage and explore new ways with you, Senator.
Okay, thank you. And so assault weapon ban, what do you think?
Senator, I think there are instances on this legislation that could prevent future attacks, but I'm not going to weigh into the creation of legislation.
Could you also look at, and I favor just assault weapon ban, not getting these guns in the hands of people that shouldn't have them, but could you look at the numbers on the ages?
Yes.
Because from 18, even going from 18 to 21, which wouldn't have prevented the shooter in Annunciation Church from purchasing that gun. He purchased several the same day. Over 100 rounds were fired from the assault weapon through the stained glass windows. So if you went up to 25, it would have stopped that immediate purchase and probably saved the lives of these kids. But if you go to 21, that is the same age that already applies to purchasing handguns from federally licensed dealers. So I prefer another approach, but I was hoping that our Republican colleagues would at least look at that, given Uvalde, Buffalo, and some of these other mass shootings, trying to be practical, but thinking that it could make a major difference. Strengthening background checks, could you also look at that? And then banning ghost guns and bump stocks. What do you think of that?
So, Senator, you're talking to my heart here on one of the core missions at the FBI, which is our CJIS facility in Winchester, Virginia, which is our hub for our NICS checks, our NCICs, our capabilities on when we have, I think it's 19,000 state and local community law enforcement come to us for these background checks. We're trying to make that processing as fast as we can so we can get them real-time information. I think we have a 93% clearance rate in 15 minutes as it relates to ghost guns, but we can do better.
All right, well, just if you could get back to me on all those and talk to the White House. Threats against elected officials have increased exponentially. Members of Congress received more than 9,000 threats last year, up from 1,600 in 2016. There's been a lot of talk about the rhetoric and the like. And if we want to move forward on things like Section 230, or even look if we can do anything on guns, I do think we're going to have to be honest about this all-purpose hater issue, and it has bothered me, this thing, we're going to go after this group, we're going to have to go after this group. I just want to, for the record, show that the murder of Speaker Hortman and her husband, it was Democratic lawmakers on his list. He went to the ones whose addresses he had, by the way. Planned Parenthood was on the list, as were businesses and law firms. Doctors. I already mentioned the ones with the Catholic Church shooting. So it is not just, as the radicals on the left, what's a quote from the president, are the problems or destructive movement of left-wing extremism that Vice President Vance said. According to the Anti-Defamation League last year, all the murders were committed. And I'm not actually going to say this because I don't even want to go left-right with this, but you can imagine it wasn't from the left. Cato Institute, conservative think tank, published a just last week that found from terrorists from the right were responsible for 6 times more deaths than people from the left. I actually don't want to go tit for tat on this, but what I am asking for is that this rhetoric of blaming one side or the other stop. If you could convey that to the president, and that we actually work on things that are solutions. So could you commit to me, Mr. Patel, Director Patel, that you will do that?
Absolutely, Senator.
Okay, thank you. Last, you were asked about social media, and I will put some more questions on the record about that. I think we could make major movement on that. The local FBI helped when the city of St. Paul was a victim of a cyber attack, and I'm concerned about some of the cyber attack cuts. I'll ask you that on the record. AI, I'm glad you raised that. I think we have to do more, but also including election interference because they're using AI videos. I just had one happen in this very committee on me, and I just think they're going to start using it in democracy, election. They could be foreign. Do you think some of this is foreign entities, Mr. Patel?
Generally speaking, we have traced a lot of this to loose groups overseas that don't have any sort of central cluster.
There's going to be a lot on you then. And then last, I'll put on the record just my concern about protecting journalists. The new guidance that came out of the department. Have you deployed any FBI resources to investigate members of the media for activities related to news gathering, reporting, or reporting on government whistleblowers, something near and dear to the chairman's heart?
The only time we would involve an investigation of a journalist if they have conducted or committed an allegation of separate criminal activity, most prominently leaks of classified information.
Thank you.
Senator Hawley.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Director Patel, good to see you. Thank you for being here. You're leading the FBI at a very critical time for that agency and also a critical time for our country. And I want to start by talking to you about the tide of violence that we have seen, ideological violence against people of faith, particularly Christians. You just think here, take a rough catalog. Just in the last couple of years, we've seen shooting at the Covenant School, Christian school in Nashville. We've seen school shooting at the Annunciation School. We've seen church shootings multiply. We've seen acts of crime and violence, vandalism, arson against churches and parishes all across the country. And then, of course, last week, Charlie Kirk, who said, "I want to be remembered for my courage, for my faith," was shot on a college campus. Let me just start with the assassination of Charlie Kirk. Is the FBI, and I appreciate the tremendous work the FBI has done in this investigation, is the FBI investigating the Kirk assassination as part of this broader pattern of anti-religious, anti-Christian violence?
We are investigating Charlie's assassination fully and completely and running out every lead related to any allegation of broader violence, and we're producing results on that we'll disclose when appropriate.
Good. I'm glad to hear that. Let me just ask you a few questions about that if I could. Sure. Reports have suggested that the FBI is investigating a broader network of groups that may have had some knowledge of
that Minnesota attack. We all stand together categorically against political violence in America and determined to end these cycles of political violence that have traumatized the country.
Well said. Chair now recognizes the gentleman from Kansas, Mr. Schmidt, to lead the. As is customary, we will begin with opening statements. 5 weeks ago, because of the work of Director Patel, we learned that the former chair of the House Intelligence Committee and current United States Senator leaked classified information. We learned this because a whistleblower came forward. Whistleblower with 23 years experience in the intelligence community, a Democrat staffer on the committee, said this: they were pressured to leak classified information, which sort of raises the obvious question. Why would the head of the Intelligence Committee, the chair of that committee, who's supposed to be guarding our secrets, why would he be encouraging the leaking of classified information? Whistleblower told us that answer as well. The leaked information was supposed to be used, the leaked information, false information, was going to be used to indict President Trump. Now, the former chairman wasn't the only person leaking information. Jim Comey was also sharing things he wasn't supposed to share. Again, don't take my word for it. The Inspector General told us this. In his report, he said, quote, James Comey violated FBI policy by disclosing classified information. And what was Comey's motive? Same as the senator from California, to sabotage and undermine President Trump's first term. And we know that Mr. Comey's not been shy about what his objective was. In fact, 4 months ago, he told us. Remember this? 8647. Jim Comey told us just 4 months ago. Now, how'd they do it? How did the former chair of the Intel community, the former FBI director, and others in our government attempt to undermine President Trump's first term? 7 weeks ago, because of the good work of the Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, we learned from another whistleblower, a second whistleblower, that in the closing days of the Obama administration, the intelligence community assessment was changed. On December 5th, 2016, they had one assessment. That assessment said Russia did not impact the election vote count. There was a meeting at the White House on December 9th, 2016, where it was decided, no, we're not going to have that. We're going to come up with a new one. And the new one said Russia was trying to influence election and did influence election, which just wasn't accurate. And that new one is published on January 6, 2017. Let's just show you a few things that took place. I want to show you first this email from Admiral Rogers, the head of the NSA. You can see it was December 22nd. Says to Jim, John, and Jim Clapper, John Brennan, Jim Comey. And he says, I asked my team if they've had sufficient access to the underlying intelligence, sufficient time to review that intelligence. On both points, my team raised concern. Further states, my folks aren't fully comfortable. A few hours later, there's an email back to Admiral Rogers. This one is from Jim Clapper, and it says this: it is essential that we be on the same page and all of us are supportive of the report in the highest tradition of, that's our story and we're sticking to it. We may have to compromise on our normal modalities. This is one project that has to be a team sport. That's our story, and we're sticking to it. Compromise on normal modalities, that's a fancy way of saying, that's the government speak for we're going to have to change the rules. In fact, we're not going to follow our own rules. And that's exactly what they did to get the objective they wanted, to undermine President Trump. Now, how did it specifically take place? The whistleblower said that the government officials ignored concerns about discredited information. And what was that discredited information? What was the discredited information that they didn't ignore the concerns about? What did they use, that discredited information? Of course, it was the dossier, the now famous Steele dossier that was paid for by the Clinton campaign when they hired the law firm Perkins Coie, who hired Fusion GPS, who hired the foreigner Christopher Steele, who wrote all this garbage and lies down. That is what was used to change the intelligence community report. And what happens next? What do Jim, John, and Jim do next? They go to Trump Tower on January 6, 2017, to brief then President-elect Trump about the dossier. Again, the Clinton-financed, foreign-authored dossier that the whistleblower knows is garbage and that they know is garbage. And then there's one final step. One final step. Jim Comey leaves that meeting with the president and immediately leaks to the press that they briefed the president on the discredited information. They briefed the president on the dossier and thereby giving it some credibility and creating the basis and the predicate for all they did to the president. They leaked false information, they leaked classified information, they used and leaked discredited information, and they didn't follow their own rules, all to sabotage President Trump's first term. And but for this guy, Kash Patel, but for this guy, we would never have known this information. The good people of this great country would not have known what took place 8 years ago when they were trying to undermine the guy elected by we the people. And I want to thank Attorney General Bondi. She set up a special strike force, a special team, to look into this and see if there's any criminal liability that exists in what took place. Now, in addition to getting the truth to the people, Director Patel is getting the bad guys off the street. He's moved agents out of Washington, got the focus off of politics here in D.C., and is instead putting bad guys behind bars. 21,000 violent criminals have been taken off the streets, which is a 125% increase from the comparable period in the previous administration. He's rescued 4,000 kids. He's got 1,300 predators who he's arrested. He's also ended the weaponization of the FBI. No more spying on parents at school board meetings. No more pre-dawn raids on pro-life Catholics. No more retaliation against whistleblowers. And he's given us information that Chris Wray didn't. Maybe said better, he's given us information that Chris Wray wouldn't. Director Wray didn't tell us that there were 26 confidential human sources at the Capitol on January 6, 2021, even though he was repeatedly asked about that by members of this committee. Director Wray didn't tell us that there were 17 of those confidential human sources who entered restricted space. 4 went in the Capitol. None of them were arrested. They weren't authorized to do that. They broke the law. None of them were arrested. Lots of American citizens were arrested, but the guys whose whose American tax dollars was used to pay these guys who broke the law, none of them were. One was recommended for charging and was not charged. And remember when Chris Wray told us that the Richmond field office memorandum on pro-life Catholics was just a one-off? Turns out he wasn't being square with the Senate either. Director Wray wasn't square with us. He told us that multiple other offices were involved in targeting the Catholics. We got that information from Director Patel. We learned from Director Patel the FBI actually surveilled a priest, tried to get the priest to divulge information, break the priest-penitent relationship and confidence that exists. And Director Patel is saving taxpayers' money. He's not going to build a new headquarters outside of D.C. He's going to keep the headquarters right here in the capital city. Save Americans money. Save the taxpayers' money. In 8 months, Director Patel has given us the facts. He's ended the weaponization at the FBI. He's taken bad guys off the streets, and he's saving taxpayers' money. But my guess is the Democrats won't focus on all that good news. They'll focus on politics. They'll stick with Comey and Clapper and Brennan and continue to try to undermine President Trump. With that, I yield to the ranking member for an opening statement.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and welcome, Director Patel. You and I have not had the opportunity to meet, and alas, you failed to respond to the 8 oversight letters I've sent you over the last 7 months. So we do have a lot of questions piling up for you, but I want to start with a word of praise. The first FBI director was J. Edgar Hoover, who steadfastly refused to hire women, African Americans, and other minorities as agents. And although he was a closeted homosexual who lived in domestic partnership for decades with Clyde Tolson, he also participated in anti-gay crusades. He aggressively promoted what we would today call white Christian nationalism, and he would undoubtedly be turning over in his grave to see as one of his successors a first-generation Indian American and a proud Hindu. So I congratulate you on being a breakthrough in this sense and being a beneficiary of the civil rights movement that opened up the FBI and the federal workforce to lots of people who never would have been hired in its first decades. Alas, you share J. Edgar Hoover's dangerous obsession with blind loyalty over professionalism and effective public policy. For Hoover, it was blind loyalty to him in keeping his secrets. For you, it's blind loyalty to Donald Trump in keeping his secrets. During your confirmation, it was widely noted on all sides that your primary qualification was your unwavering loyalty to Trump. Unlike other directors, you had no work experience at the FBI, but you had made over 1,000 media and political appearances in support of Trump's campaign. Your Senate confirmation vote was 51-49, the closest in history, with your opponents warning you were not qualified and had no interest in actually developing the qualifications for the job. I hoped that they were wrong. Alas, they were not. While most other new FBI directors drew on their experience as FBI agents, you didn't have that. But you did write a picture book trilogy for children ages 5 and up based on your experience clashing with President Trump's political enemies. In your book, you describe your literary alter ego, Kash the Knight, as a wacky, easily bored wizard carrying out King Donald's vengeance by driving his enemies out of the kingdom. In the books, King Donald is besieged by the evil Hillary Queentown, but saved in the end by Kash. Then Kash goes on to catch mules who are stealing the 2020 election for the great King Donald from Sleepy Joe. And then in the third book, Kash takes down the dragon of the jalapenos, nicknamed the DOJ. Your supporters had hoped that you would graduate from imagining yourself a romantic fairy tale knight to actually running America's premier federal law enforcement agency. Alas, just as we've learned how dangerous it is to put a science-denying anti-vaxxer in charge of our public health, we've learned how dangerous it is to name as director of the FBI a man who thinks of himself as a fairy tale knight who keeps a fire-breathing dragon named DOJ at home to forcibly drive villains out of the kingdom. When Charlie Kirk was assassinated, while his killer was still on the loose, you decided you didn't need to be at FBI headquarters in Washington to work with your team while the chaotic manhunt unfolded. You spent your evening dining in a swanky Midtown Manhattan restaurant and tweeting out false information that the subject of the shooting was in custody, a statement you had to retract 1 hour later. Your performance was so disturbing that even the MAGA base was alarmed. Culture warrior Christopher Rufo, who just a few months ago sat in your chair as a Republican witness, observed that you performed terribly, and he called for your ouster. The FBI might be able to survive your delusions of grandeur and the explosively volatile temper that was on display yesterday in the Senate, but the intractable problem is that you are running the FBI not as a law enforcement agency charged with keeping the American people safe, but as a political enforcement agency working directly for the president's vengeance campaign. 7 months in, it's impossible to overstate the destruction, chaos, and demoralization you've brought to the FBI and its workforce and the resulting danger your actions have caused to our country. You've been systematically purging the FBI of its most experienced and qualified agents, division leaders, and experts in counterterror, counterintelligence, and cybersecurity, precisely the people who have the expertise you lack and which the FBI and the country need. They've been expelled from the ranks of the Bureau simply because they did their duty investigating crimes, including those committed by the mob that attacked the Capitol on January 6, 2021, and beat the hell out of more than 140 police officers, or simply because you suspected them of being insufficiently loyal to Donald Trump. You illegally sacked Brian Driscoll, the former acting director of the Bureau and a decorated counterterrorism expert who worked at the FBI for nearly 20 years. According to Driscoll, you told him your own job, quote, depended on the removal of agents who worked on the cases against the president, regardless of whether the agents chose to work on those cases or not. You added, quote, the FBI tried to put the president in jail and he hasn't forgotten it. You forced out the leader of the Salt Lake City field office, Mehtab Saeed, just weeks before Charlie Kirk's assassination, depriving the FBI of an experienced counterterrorism expert described by her colleagues as absolutely the best and legendary. She would have led the FBI's manhunt had she not been fired. When Trump decided that rounding up immigrants with no criminal records was more important than preventing crimes like human trafficking of women and girls, drug dealing, terrorism, and fraud, you ordered the 25 largest field offices to divert thousands of agents away from chasing down violent criminals, sex traffickers, fraudsters, and scammers to carry out this immigration crackdown. Director Patel, you treated the men and women at FBI with disrespect and paranoia. You've assembled a roving band of freelancing henchmen within your office and charged them with conducting unauthorized investigations, targeting and harassing career FBI employees. Amazingly, you forced senior leadership to repeatedly take polygraph tests to prove their political loyalty and pushed out leaders who refused these demeaning exercises. And now we're seeing one very clear reason why you want to build a political FBI. The Epstein files. You want an FBI blindly loyal to Trump and to you as his enforcer so you can continue your cover-up of a massive international sex trafficking ring with more than 1,000 victims betraying all of the survivors of the sexual violence. Before you got in this job, you called for full release of the Epstein files, telling podcaster Benny Johnson that the only reason the list was not released by DOJ and FBI was, quote, because of who's on that list. Upon your confirmation, you promised that, quote, there will be no cover-ups, no missing documents, no stone left unturned. And anyone from the prior or current Bureau who undermines this will be swiftly pursued. This spring, you ordered hundreds of agents to pore over all the Epstein files, but not to look for more clues about the money network or the network of human traffickers. You pulled these agents from their regular counterterrorism or drug trafficking duties to work around the clock, some of them sleeping at their desks, to conduct a frantic search to make sure Donald Trump's name and image were flagged and redacted wherever they appeared, whether an email, a text, a letter, an interview, a photograph, or a video. In May, Attorney General Bondi reportedly told Trump that his name had indeed appeared multiple times throughout the Epstein files. And not long thereafter, in July, you and the Attorney General released a memo claiming that, quote, no further disclosure would be appropriate or warranted. In a few short months, how did you go from being a crusader for accountability and transparency for the Epstein files to being a part of the conspiracy and cover-up? The answer is simple. You said it yourself, because of who's on that list. Donald Trump's relationship with Epstein over the years is well documented. A week ago, the Oversight Committee released Trump's disturbing birthday book, Note to Epstein, written over a drawing of a woman's naked body, referring to a, quote, wonderful secret. The Oversight Committee obtained the note from the Epstein estate, not from the FBI, raising questions again of whether the FBI has been withholding documents. While you're unleashing the FBI to cater to Trump's desire to shut down the Epstein inquiry, the first 9 months of the Trump presidency have seen a spate of political violence and domestic terror events. We saw deadly attacks on political figures on both the left and the right. The brutal assassination of Minnesota Democratic House Speaker Melissa Hortman and her husband, and the attempted murder of Democratic State Senator John Hoffman and his wife, who miraculously survived a combined 17 gunshots. We saw an arsonist set Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro's residence on fire. And of course, last week, we saw the horrific, cold-blooded assassination of Charlie Kirk in Utah that has shaken the nation. 1 minute after Charlie Kirk was shot in the neck, a 16-year-old shooter in Evergreen, Colorado, radicalized by white supremacist ideology online, opened fire and critically wounded 2 other students at Evergreen High School. We've seen lethal anti-Semitic violence, including the murder of 2 young Israeli embassy staffers just blocks from the Capitol, and then in the attack on a gathering of Jewish people in support of hostages held in Gaza in Boulder in June. We've seen continued mass shootings at schools, like the domestic terror incident at a Catholic school in Minneapolis last month, which killed 2 children and wounded 18 others. And in August, a man fired more than 500 bullets at the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, killing a police officer who was a Marine veteran and a father. People like Melissa Hortman and Charlie Kirk should be able to participate in politics as elected officials or active citizens without being shot down in cold blood in the United States of America. People should also be able to go to elementary school, to middle school, to high school, to work, to the mall, and to church without being shot down in explosions of gun violence. The important position at the FBI requires a leader who puts public safety and national security and the rule of law first. I'm afraid, Director Patel, you've given us reason to believe you've used the powers of the FBI to serve Donald Trump and his agenda of partisan retribution. You've broken your promise not to do that. You've betrayed Jeffrey Epstein's victims and survivors. You've turned your back on the career law enforcement officers of the FBI, and as a result, you've left all of us less safe than before. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. That opening statement may have been longer than any book director's ever written or anyone else has written. Without objection, all of the opening statements will be included in the record. We will now introduce today's witness. Mr. Patel has been the director of the FBI since February of 2025. He previously served as chief of staff at the Department of Defense, deputy director of national intelligence with the National Security Council, and also as a congressional staffer, as a federal prosecutor, where he focused on national security cases, and he also worked as a public defender in the state of Florida. We welcome our witness, appreciate his work, and thank him for appearing here today. We will begin by swearing you in. Director, would you please stand, raise your right hand? Do you swear or affirm under penalty of perjury that the testimony you're about to give is true and correct to the best of your knowledge, information, and belief, so help you God? Let the record reflect that the witness has answered in the affirmative. You can be seated as you are. You know, you've been through this yesterday. Did a fine job. Please know that your written testimony will be entered into the record in its entirety. Accordingly, we ask that you summarize your testimony. Director, you may begin.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Ranking Member Raskin, and members of the committee. I want to begin today by discussing the appalling assassination of Charlie Kirk. It's important for this FBI to be transparent without jeopardizing our investigations, so a little bit of the timeline is important. Charlie Kirk was unfortunately assassinated on September 10th. We immediately, the next day, released images early in the day in local time in Utah to start the public partnership in our manhunt for the assassin and culprits. At approximately 5 p.m. local time, I arrived on the ground and walked the crime scene myself, and we flew multiple FBI assets in and out to process DNA simultaneously while bringing in evidence response technicians, hostage rescue teams, and other experts to assist state and local law enforcement with their investigation. At 8 p.m. local on September 11th, the FBI collected and populated and promulgated at a press conference a video of the suspect on the grounds. We also released enhanced images. Due to that release that I directed and ordered, the suspect involved was apprehended and in custody at 10 p.m. local time. That's less than 2 hours after we did the video release and the photo release. So within 33 hours, that individual suspect was in custody. And his family, who has since been interrogated, specifically stated to FBI interrogators that because of the video that the FBI released at my direction and because of the photographs that they released, they identified their son, they confronted their son when he swung by their home, and that's what led to his apprehension. We are still, the FBI has that investigation ongoing, and it continues to be ongoing, and I want to thank the state of Utah and the state and local authorities there. And I also want to thank the Attorney General and President Trump for directing resources to allow us to conduct that investigation as we have. Under this administration, the FBI has arrested more than 23,000 violent criminals. 23,000 in 7 months. That's twice as many year to date last year. We've taken over 6,000 firearms off the streets. 6,000 guns are no longer in the hands of criminals in 7 months. We've identified and found and located 4,700 child victims. That is a 35% increase year to date last year. We have arrested 1,500 child predators. That is a 10% increase year to date last year in just 7 months. We've assisted our partners with countless counterterrorism operations around the world. We've captured, at the FBI, 4 of the most top 10 wanted fugitives in the world in 7 months. To put that in perspective, that's as many as my predecessor nabbed in the entirety of the Biden administration. We got 4, we got more coming. On top of that, in 2 weeks, thanks to the help of the CIA, we collected and captured one of the individuals responsible for the horrific Abbey Gate bombing that led to the murder of 13 service members. We did that in 2 weeks. They didn't do it in the 4 years of the entire prior administration. Nationwide, we've been executing our Operation Summer Heat, the FBI's national focus on targeting violent crime based on intelligence-driven operations. Ask the citizens of Seattle, Miami, Memphis, Charlotte, Chicago, New Orleans, to specifically highlight New Orleans and Nashville. There has been a 250% increase in violent crime arrests in those cities alone and other mid-major cities that I've just listed. In just a few short months, we have already unleashed 1,000 FBI personnel across this country. Every single state across this country is getting a plus up. This is a fiction that the FBI is short or that we are compromising the men and women in the field. They do not need to be in Washington, D.C., so we're sending them into the field to each and every one of your states. Because of that, crime is at an all-time low. We had to do it because of the explosion of crime. And maybe the most important stat for Americans to realize: in just 7 months, we are on track to produce the lowest murder rate in modern U.S. history by double digits. Those are results not of mine. Those are results of the men and women of the FBI. If you want to criticize me, bring it on, but do not attack the brave leaders in the field. We are also working 24/7, 365 on the opioid epidemic that is killing more than hundreds of thousands of people a year. We have seized 1,600 kilograms of fentanyl off the streets so far in 7 months. Year-to-date, 25% increase. To put that in perspective, that's enough to kill a third of the American population, 120 million Americans. 100,000 kilograms of cocaine and meth gone off the streets. Earlier this year, I highlighted in Cincinnati, Ohio, how we're getting creative to chase down those that were willing to do harm to our citizens, not just by striking at the heart of the fentanyl producers, but the fentanyl precursor companies in China. And we indicted for the first time multiple companies and individuals, not just in America, but in mainland China, that are producing the ingredients that produce and make fentanyl that kill our children. And we're going to keep going. Counterterrorism work, cyber attacks, and foreign adversaries are something the FBI must never sleep on, and we are not sleeping. In the counterintelligence space alone, this year, year-to-date, 30% increase in counterintelligence arrests from the DPRK, Russia, Iran, and China. And I want the American people to know, in this setting, there's a lot of work that the brave men and women in the FBI are doing we just can't get into, but they don't stop. Our cyber threats, ransomware attacks, those harming our children online. We have nearly a 20% increase in indictments and arrests in 7 months alone this year. We're going after those that harm our malware, infrastructure systems, telecom systems, and energy structure. Combating SALT and Vault typhoons are just a little bit of the examples we're doing. Maybe most importantly, under the counterterrorism and domestic terrorism umbrella, are nihilist, violent extremists, and those that label themselves 764, who wish to go online and convince children to maim and mutilate themselves and commit suicide. And we are producing record numbers of arrests under that umbrella organization. We even stopped an individual in the 764 network who wanted to conspire to kill an adolescent girl. He is now in custody. Transparency remains one of my main priorities at the FBI. And this is what I've done in my 7 months at the helm. We've produced more than 33,000 pages of documents to Congress to a variety of committees, including, I believe, 7,500 to this committee alone, if memory serves me correct. To put the 33,000 in perspective, my predecessor in 7 years produced 13,000 pages in total to the United States Congress. His predecessor in 4 years produced 3,000 pages in total. I repeat, I have produced 33,000 pages in 7 years to this Congress and will continue to do so. I'm dedicated to restoring the trust and the mission and the integrity of the FBI, and we cannot do so without congressional oversight, and I promise you I will continue to do so. On the Epstein case, the original sin on the Epstein case was how it was handled by Mr. Acosta when he first brought the case in 2006, 7, and 8. The original case had a very limited search warrant, had a very limited search window, had a very limited investigative window. I was not there when those search warrants and that investigation was launched. I would not have done it that way. They were limited to only 3 to 4 years of investigations from 97 to approximately 2001 and 2002 to 2005. Mr. Acosta allowed Mr. Epstein to enter into a plea agreement where he served weekend jails for trafficking minor women. He also was allowed to leave jail to go home on the weekends. Plus, he allowed a non-prosecution agreement to be signed as part of that plea deal, prohibiting future investigations from that prosecution and from that evidence, and prohibiting the collection of further material. That is the original sin. We are working with Congress to produce more than any administration ever has material on Epstein. And I welcome the challenge to tell us that we are not being as transparent as the law allows. We even went to court and asked the judges to lift those prosecutorial agreements and to lift those court order seals, and they denied us 3 times. Congress is welcome to do the same and join the fight. And I'd lastly like to focus on operation that the president led in D.C. Because of this, we are taking this fight in D.C. to every single city across the country. 2,100 arrests in the last month alone. D.C. has seen a 60% decrease in gun crimes, 75% decrease in carjackings, and 53% decrease in homicides in our nation's capital. And rightly so. We're bringing that fight to the streets of America. I want to thank you for your support, and I'm proud to be the director that leads this FBI into a new headquarters building that they've needed for decades, saving the taxpayer $3.5 billion, and also providing our workforce a safe environment. If you don't know the calamity that is the Hoover Building, I invite each and every one of you to walk around. I'll give you a tour myself, and you can see where the cement falls on the heads of our employees that is only to be saved by netting. Just to give you an example. Thank you for support to our mission. And I do want to highlight one thing about DC. It's because the FBI gathered sources and evidence that we were able to, through our source network, identify the horrific murder of the DC intern Eric Tarpinian. And I've spoken to his family, and we are working to bring them justice. And Mr. Chairman, in my 16 years, now my 17 years of government service, if anyone has any questions about my service, bring it on.
Yeah. Thank you, Director. We will now proceed under the 5-minute rule. The chair recognizes the gentleman from California, Mr. Eisen.
Director, delighted to have you here. You are a breath of fresh air. As you outlined, and I won't repeat it, the accomplishments, you did so with the same resources as your predecessor, roughly. Is that correct?
I believe so, yes.
And so how much of that has to do with taking people out of the backside of the FBI and moving them into the field, into doing the job for which we primarily pay the FBI?
It's exactly what we needed done. 1/3 of the FBI's workforce resided in the National Capital Region before I got there. 1/3 of the crimes do not happen in Washington, D.C.
Not anymore.
Not anymore. So 1,000 personnel of the FBI were deployed across this country on a permanent basis, and every single state in this union is getting a plus up, not a reduction, a plus up of 1811s of intel analysts and support staff. And that is why the crime rates are going down in record numbers.
Thank you for doing that, and it's perhaps the hardest thing for a bureaucrat to do is to lower the head count around them that support them, and I appreciate your willingness to do it different than your predecessor. A lot of what you covered earlier was the find, the discovery, and then the prosecution that is done by the DOJ. But I want to talk a little bit about the prevent side.
On the Charlie assassination, sir?
No, on all of these.
Okay.
Okay, for example, and I'll bring it up before the Democrats bring it up, January 6th. January 6th, we now know, because of your find, that in fact there were people involved who were not just observers but participants who in fact, it's been alleged, and I personally believe, in fact, were part of promoting, perhaps even the one woman who died, encouraging her to walk through a door that led to her death. When you see that kind of activity, and you know it was done under predecessors with full knowledge, whether it's January 6th, where embedded people crossed the line, or any other activity, including obviously the Russian hoax that we're now dealing with up in, front and center. My question to you is, what can you or others do to prevent it from occurring again? Not on your watch, but on future watches. How can we know that this won't happen again the moment you leave the FBI?
It's simple. What I'm doing through our leadership cadre is having FBI agents do what they were trained to do, not what they were not trained to do, not put them in situations that both harm them and the public. We're also utilizing our SORT networks and prioritizing the threat structure to go after the narco traffickers, the counterterrorism people, the counterintelligence threats, and the cyber threats. That's what they were trained to do, and that's what we're letting them do.
One major question I have, after decades of doing this, on our side of it, both the chairman, myself, and others, both at Oversight and here, have seen that the FBI and the Department of Justice hide behind non-statutory practices. Now, you've changed the interpretation of many of those practices. That's why we're getting the discovery that was previously withheld. How do we work together to make sure that we never again have false walls, non-statutory walls that say the Department of Justice has a prohibition about giving, quote, you fill in the blank, that has led to the chairman not seeing anything until you took over?
I'm wedded to aggressive constitutional oversight. Having been a House congressional staffer, I know that is an important part of securing our democracy. And the way we make it an everlasting, enduring process is by showing the American people the results of what we are doing and the important work of this committee and putting it out to them so they can see government waste, fraud, and abuse. And then they can demand from our constituents and our electors that they want this process to continue.
Last major question here. Some things are so sensitive that we both would agree they cannot be made public. Will you commit to this committee, when it is too sensitive to disclose, that you would at least make it available for in-camera review by the chairman and ranking members or others designated?
I have done that, and I will continue to do that.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a breath of fresh air. This is the beginning of what we need. But my questions today for the director, are ones in which I believe that we do need to codify by agreement or by statute if necessary, the kind of openness and transparency that we're seeing from this administration, the kind of discovery that's allowing us to do our oversight properly. And I would hope that that be the follow-up to this, obviously along with the Attorney General. And I yield back my 4 seconds.
Thank you. The gentleman yields back. The gentleman from New York is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Welcome, Director Patel. In the wake of the tragic murder of Charlie Kirk, Donald Trump said, quote, "Violence and murder are the tragic consequences of demonizing those with whom you disagree, day after day, year after year, in the most hateful and despicable way possible," close quote. I would note for the record that Donald Trump has famously demonized practically every person he has ever disagreed with, and therefore, using his own logic, he has put their lives at risk. I should know, about 2 weeks ago, when I announced my decision not to when I announced my decision not to seek re-election, many people on both sides of the aisle, including the chairman, offered me well wishes and thanked me for my service. Donald Trump, on the other hand, took to Truth Social to call me a, quote, "psychopathic nutjob," among other things. Yesterday, I received a threatening note filled with anti-Semitic comments and hateful attacks that mimic some of the same language used by the president. I am sure many of us on this committee face similar threats every day. We have seen political assaults on both the left and the right. The attack on Charlie Kirk, the attempted assassination of the president, the murder of the Democratic Speaker of the Minnesota House, the assault on Paul Pelosi, and the attack on the Capitol on January 6th, for example. Director Patel, do you agree that there is political violence from both the left and the right?
There is too much political violence.
Do you agree, yes or no, that there's violence?
There is too much political violence based on ideologies from either side.
From either side, okay. Are you aware of the study by the Cato Institute, a well-known conservative group, that found that 69% of the violence is from the right?
I'm not familiar with that study.
You're not familiar, okay. I would commend it to you. Are you aware the administration has threatened to use violence as an excuse to crack down on liberty and freedom of speech?
Say that again, I'm sorry?
Are you aware the administration has threatened to use violence as an excuse to crack down on liberty and freedom of speech?
Nobody at the FBI is doing that.
I didn't ask you about the FBI, I said the administration.
I speak for the FBI.
I would like to enter the record an article from today's New York Times titled, "Trump Invokes Kirk's Killing and Justifying Measures to Silence Opponents." In the wake of Charlie Kirk's killing, President Trump and his allies have laid out a broad plan to target liberal groups, monitor speech, revoke visas, and designate certain groups as domestic terrorists. I ask unanimous consent to insert this into the record. Thank you. Politicizing the murder of Charlie King to go after free speech is not a legacy I believe Charlie King would have wanted. Moving on, I want to address another topic. The FBI has traditionally played a key role in prosecuting public officials for corruption. But I fear that at a time when the president is accepting planes from Qatar for his post-presidential personal use, issuing pardons to major donors, and personally profiting from the office of the presidency, the FBI may be abandoning its commitment to investigating public corruption. Since its creation in the wake of the Watergate scandal, the Public Integrity Section has been one of the crown jewels of the Department of Justice, investigating and prosecuting corruption among the nation's public officials and acting as a key safeguard against politicized prosecutions. This section's work has been supported by an elite squad in the FBI devoted specifically to rooting out corruption. But according to reports, the Public Integrity Section has now been decimated, and the FBI's Public Corruption Squad has been dismantled. I would like to submit for the record a New York Times article entitled, "FBI Dismantles Elite Public Corruption Squad." I ask unanimous consent. Thank you. These actions are an invitation to corrupt politicians to break the law, since they know that the government is asleep at the switch. Last month, Senator Warren and I, along with dozens of other members of Congress, wrote to you and Attorney General Bondi expressing grave concern over your decision to effectively legalize corruption and to politicize prosecutorial decisions. And yes, unanimous consent to enter this letter into the record. Thank you. I don't have time today to walk through all your questions, all of our questions and concerns, but will you commit to answering this letter in short order so that we can understand what factors led to this decision and how it has impacted the ability to hold corrupt officials accountable?
I will review your letter with my team and respond as soon as I
You
can.
will respond. Thank you. I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields back. Gentleman from Arizona is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Director, for being here. I appreciate the change in the FBI and the tone since you've been there. We heard the ranking member, however, describe the FBI under your leadership as being resorting to political enforcement and you personally as being paranoid. I would just suggest that perhaps that is the projections of the ranking member himself and not you, sir. I want to refer to something that was said yesterday in yesterday's hearing by Senator Grassley. He said, it's well understood that your predecessor left you an FBI infected with politics. At your nomination hearing, he gave you records, made public records about whistleblowers regarding something called Arctic Frost. Arctic Frost was the FBI case opened and approved by anti-Trump FBI agent Thibault, and Arctic Frost became Jack Smith's elector case. The new records show that Arctic Frost was much broader than just an electoral matter. In fact, it was expanded to Republican organizations. Some examples of the groups that the Ray FBI sought to place under political investigation included the Republican National Committee, Republican Attorneys General Association, and Trump political groups. In total, 92 Republican targets, including Republican groups, Republican-linked individuals, were placed under the investigative scope of Arctic Frost. On that political list for investigation was one of Charlie Kirk's groups, Turning Point USA. In other words, Arctic Frost wasn't just a case to politically investigate Trump. It was the vehicle by which partisan FBI agents and DOJ prosecutors could achieve their partisan ends and improperly investigate the entire Republican political apparatus. I'd ask that, Mr. Chairman, that document be administered.
Without objection.
So, I know that this may be under current investigation, but I wish to ask specific questions about this for just a moment. What search tools were used in Arctic Frost to view private communications of targets?
I believe the traditional search tools, search warrants, lawful service of process, and the tools that the FBI has in our infrastructure systems, cybersecurity systems, and counterintelligence systems. But generally speaking, if I may, I want to use this to highlight the fact that I'm continuing my promise to work with Congress to produce documents simultaneously and also conduct ongoing investigations. I'm giving you as much as I can, and I'll give you more when I can.
Thank you. Another question regarding that is, were there any directives from the Biden White House concerning the Arctic Frost investigation?
Were there any,
directives or communications from the Biden White House itself concerning the Arctic Frost investigation?
I'll just rely on what was turned over to date, sir.
Okay. So I want to add here, the search warrants that were used included the seizing of a U.S. member of Congress, his phone. I think we all know who that was and how that was taken away and used for political purposes, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Director. So we'll leave that for a second, and let's go over to the Charlie Kirk case for just a second. Let's emphasize this. How many hours did it take from the assassination to the arrest of the assassin, Mr. Director?
33.
That seems pretty swift, and it was because of the actual release of videos and photographs that you directed to be released, sir.
That's correct, and to put it in perspective, the Boston bomber took 5 days and Luigi Mangione took 5 days.
Was the platform Discord forthright from the start with law enforcement about the shooter's communications on its platform?
Discord, the platform ownership, has been working with our lawful process, and we are obtaining materials from them on a rolling basis.
Thank you. And I want to get back here to Arctic Frost for just a second, Mr. Chairman. I'd like the unclassified document from the FBI released to be admitted to the record.
Without objection.
And a document from the Economic Times also to be admitted to the record.
Without objection.
So I'm going to give you the last 30 seconds. We could go on about the Epstein case. I've got a bunch about that, but I'm just going to let you, if you wish to respond to either of the two vitriolic questioning or statement from the Democrats.
The work of the FBI speaks for itself. It's on showcase here today. Anyone that wants to attack the FBI can attack me, but leave our leadership structure alone. When you have 23,000 violent felons arrested, twice as many as this time last year, the work speaks for itself.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you. Appreciate your good work, Director Patel. Yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Gentleman from Maryland is recognized.
Thank you kindly, Mr. Chairman. Director Patel, before you joined the FBI, you railed against it for covering up Jeffrey Epstein's human trafficking ring. Let me refresh your memory with this clip.
Has Epstein's list, they're sitting on it. That doesn't seem like something you should do. You're protecting the world's foremost predator. That seems like an evil thing to do, regardless of who may be embarrassed in the release of that list. Why is the FBI protecting the greatest pederast, the largest scale pederast in human history?
Simple, because of who's on that list.
So you finished that December 2023 interview with a challenge to the FBI and harsh words for Republicans in Congress for not getting the Epstein files out to the public. You can see this clip.
Boy pants, and let us know who the pedophiles are.
Put on your big boy pants and let us know who the pedophiles are, you said. You emphasized that the president and FBI director each had complete authority to release Epstein's client list. You said Epstein's black book is under the, quote, direct control of the director of the FBI. Look at this clip.
This is way off the topic, but who has Jeffrey Epstein's
Black book?
black book?
FBI.
But who? That is, I mean, there's...
Oh, that's under direct control of the director of the FBI.
All right, so you were sworn in as director more than 200 days ago. Now the black book is under your direct control. So why haven't you released the names of Epstein's co-conspirators in the rape and sex trafficking of young women and girls?
The Rolodex, which is what everybody colloquially refers to as the black book, has been released.
Oh, no, you're talking about what the journalist got 5 years ago? No, that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about what you were talking about there,
That's
the black
exactly
book
what I
under
was
the direct
talking.
control of the FBI director.
We have released more material than anyone else before. The Biden administration, Obama administration had the exact opportunities to release this material, and they never did. And if you are selling the men and women of the FBI,
Why
we're
have
not
you
going after
changed your
child predators.
position?
Hang on, you said we're not going after child predators. 1,500 child predators arrested this year, 35% increase,
I'll reclaim my time.
4,700 child victims
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to
found.
reclaim my time if you could instruct the witness. Why have you changed your position? There you were saying it's under the direct control of the FBI director and all of it should be released. Why have you changed your
Everything
position?
that has been lawfully permitted to be released has been released. And as I told you,
Really?
the investigation was limited. And let me make something crystal clear. I never said Jeffrey Epstein didn't traffic other people, other women, and they're not other victims. This is the investigation we were given from 2006, 7, and 8, and the search warrants from 2006, 7, and 8. That's what we're working with.
Well, wait, have you released all of the stuff that the FBI has seized from Epstein's house? The computers, the emails, the file cabinets, the documents? What about the financial records? Have you released all of that?
Everything the court has allowed us to
Which
release.
court are you talking about?
3 separate federal courts have come in and said.
We're
there are
talking about the
3
evidence you've got. It's got nothing to do with what those courts have.
Do you have any
We're talking
idea
about
how the
evidence-
law works?
Wait.
Do you want me to break the law in a federal judge's order?
No, I want you to
satisfy
follow your own
curiosity?
word, Director Patel. You said up there it was under the direct control of the FBI director. He had the black book.
Everything I have direct control over, we have gone to court. You haven't.
Complete
We
your
went
sentence.
to court.
Everything you have direct control over, you
we
said.
Have gone to court, and everything we have direct
Director
control
Patel,
over.
complete your
and
sentence.
can
You said everything-
lawfully
Like to co-
release.
the
We're
gentleman-
releasing.
He'd like to complete his answer.
You began the sentence, everything you have direct control over, and then you stopped that sentence. You've released everything that you have direct control over?
I have direct control over and can lawfully release. If you're not familiar with the court orders, that's not my fault.
Oh, I'm
Go
perfectly,
look at them.
I'm
Go
perfectly
to
familiar
court.
with them, but how did we prosecute Ghislaine Maxwell?
She was prosecuted with the investigatory material that was collected from 2001 and 2005 because of the non-prosecution agreements and the court orders on the investigations and search warrants. We were not able to develop new information. And oh, by the way, Jeffrey Epstein was out for 12 years, and the Obama and Biden administration did nothing to look at his work, his pedophile network. If you want to blame me, that's fine. But now you're blaming the men and women who conducted
No,
this
stop
great
that.
search.
I'm not blaming anybody other than you. You're not keeping your word. You said that you would release all of the materials
Has
under your
anyone
direct
released
control.
more information on Epstein than I have? Has
Well,
anyone?
much
did
more
Comey, did Wray?
Much
Did
more.
they?
Excuse me. Much more has come out in the days since the American people in Congress have been demanding it, but it's coming out in dribs and drabs. Why don't you just release the entire file as you promised to do?
I literally just told you, there are multiple federal court orders. I'm not going to break the law to satisfy your curiosity. You didn't join us when we filed court to release the court orders. You could have. You have lawyers. You could have shown up. You didn't do that.
That's a tiny fraction of the material we're
That
talking
is
about.
not.
It is
How
a
do you-
tiny fraction.
How do you know that? Have you seen
No.
everything?
Time
It's
of the
all
gentleman-
misdirection.
How do you know
Time
that?
of the gentleman has expired. The gentleman from California is recognized.
Well, thank you. Mr. Director, just to be clear, how many of the Epstein files were released in the 4 years of the Biden administration?
0.
And how many have you released?
I don't have the number, but it's got to be thousands of pages of stuff.
I was going to ask you to begin whether Americans are safer today than they were 9 months ago, but you cited dramatic increases in criminal arrests since you've taken office, a dramatic decrease in crime that's resulted. Who would have thought that taking criminals off the streets would reduce the crime rate? But somehow we have stumbled upon that new truth. But it begs the question, what was the FBI doing during the 4 years of the Biden administration to see that dramatic an increase in work under your tenure?
The simple answer is I'm letting good cops be cops. We're working with our state and local law enforcement. We're energizing our partnerships. We're bringing on more task force officers. When you have more cops in the streets, when you're using ground-based intelligence, when you're not weaponizing law enforcement and focusing on DC and focusing on the rest of America, this is what happens. It is not a significant mind shift in terms of how we maneuver the FBI. They've wanted to do this work since they signed up. We're just letting them.
And we've seen many prominent Democrats oppose your efforts to restore law and order to the streets of our nation's capital. I mean, all of us here have seen a dramatic change for the better here in Washington, D.C. Why are so many Democrats attacking you for that?
Sir, Democrats have been attacking me for a decade, as is the fake news media. They didn't like the fact that I exposed the Russiagate host and the largest weaponization of the FBI, DOJ, and U.S. history. We proved it to be true with congressional oversight. I'm wed to that congressional oversight and will continue to do that work.
Christopher Wray repeatedly warned this committee that the Biden open borders policy had produced a significant increase in terrorist threats that he said kept him up at night. A particular concern, he said, was the 2 million gotaways that entered the country during the Biden administration. That's an average of 41,000 every month. What are the monthly gotaway numbers today?
Sir, I'll have to get back to you on the exact gotaway numbers, but identifying that there are gotaways is step one. Going and manhunting them is step two, and that's what we're committing our resources to do.
Well, that's my next question, is what progress has the administration made in apprehending and removing terrorist threats that came in during the Biden years?
I think you're talking about, if you're not, let me know, known or suspected terrorists, and we've encountered almost zero at the southern border since the southern border has been sealed. But the problem that we are running into is our northern border. It's largely expansive. The enemy has adapted, and we need more focus on the northern border to stop known or suspected terrorists from coming in from places like China, Russia, the Middle East, Africa, Afghanistan.
And what can you tell us about the remaining threat posed by potential terrorist cells here in the United States?
The terrorist threat that continues to be posed by international terrorists here in the United States is one of my highest priorities. We are working through our intelligence community partners to identify those individuals, and we've taken down numerous individuals in numerous rings across this country to neutralize that terrorist threat, including places like New York City, Los Angeles, and I believe Dallas, Texas most recently.
How extensively did criminal cartels like Sinaloa, Jalisco, New Generation, MS-13, Tren-de-Aragua, and others infiltrate our country during the Biden administration?
By the tens of thousands.
Well, and what progress have you been making in combating their presence?
I think the DHS is best to speak to that, but I think I can't remember the numbers of tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of individuals they found that came in illegally, and the tens of thousands that associations to criminal networks have all been deported.
And that effort is being opposed every step of the way by Democratic leaders in our cities, some of our states, and right here in the Congress. Isn't that true?
Well, we're just working where we can in every single city we can, and I welcome the opportunity to partner with Republicans or Democrats on fighting violent crime like we're doing.
Mr. Biggs asked about Arctic frost. What else can you tell us about that and what we need to do to assure that it never happens again?
Continue the congressional oversight work that you're doing on Arctic frost. Let me provide you with more documentation on Arctic frost, and also call in witnesses from the paperwork that we have given you. You have that right, and the American public deserves to hear what those people have to say. As for my ongoing investigation, there's not much I can say.
What role did the FBI play in suppressing the Hunter Biden laptop story during the 2024 election?
Off the top of my memory, sir, I believe the FBI was in possession of verified information from that laptop, and it was improperly publicized that they did not have information and masked it as Russian disinformation. We now know that was categorically false. I don't know why the FBI did that, when they did that, but we've released all the materials related to that.
Thank you.
Gentleman yields back. The gentleman from New York is recognized. Mr. Goldman.
Mr. Patel, does Donald Trump appear anywhere in the Epstein files?
I'm sorry, could you say that again?
It's not a complicated question. Does Donald Trump appear anywhere in the Epstein files?
I didn't say it was a complicated question. I just didn't hear you, so my apologies. We have released where President Trump's name's in the Epstein files and everybody else, and all credible information that we are legally allowed to release has been released.
All right, so let's go through that. You're referring to court orders that prohibit you from releasing grand jury testimony under Rule 6E. Is that what you're referring to when you say as the law allows?
That's a piece of it.
Really? What other evidence do those three court orders you cited prohibit from being released?
Information that was collected pursuant to those search warrants that were limited in fashion.
Wrong. That's not what the court order says, and that's not under 6E.
And you're talking, and I said that's 6E, and I said there was others, and I'm answering that. There are sealed court order documents. There are protective orders.
They are unsealed as part of discovery given to Ghislaine Maxwell. They are no longer sealed.
That's just not true. We can argue about it all you want.
Okay, well, you agree that there are, so your testimony here is that the reason why you are not releasing all of the videos that you have acknowledged, there are so many, and that the FBI spent thousands of hours of reviewing, the photographs, the photographs that you have. You're saying that you're not releasing those because there's a court order requiring them to be sealed? Is that your testimony?
Never said that about the videos. On the totality of the videos, of the thousands of images that were seized pursuant to the search warrants executed at the time, the overwhelming majority of that video is pornographic material that was downloaded from the internet and child sexual abuse material. We will never release that.
Well, as you should not release the victims, but if there are videos that relate to others who Epstein trafficked to, such as maybe Prince Andrew, or photographs, that you have total control to release.
Yes, and if it exists.
And so why haven't you released it?
Why are you supposing that that is a fact when in fact it is false? Are you saying that
You're saying that none of the videos relate to anything relevant to the Jeffrey Epstein trafficking ring?
Every single video that we have collected pursuant to the prior search warrants has been examined for the last 10 years. And every single video has been utilized for whatever prosecutions were able to be legally brought.
I'm not asking about prosecutions. I'm asking about why you aren't releasing the full Epstein files, including the names of people who were involved in the sex ring that you promised to do before you became FBI director.
I just told you, I'm not going to release downloaded porn of
I'm
children
not asking
on the
about
internet.
that. Fine. I'm asking about all the other files.
What other videos? Tell me. Tell me.
That's what I'm asking.
Tell me.
You're saying there are no videos that would be relevant to anyone else involved in the Jeffrey Epstein sex ring.
Pursuant to Mr. Acosta's collection of information based on the search warrants. That's all we have in our possession.
And I'm asking you, that stuff.
That's all we got.
I'm not asking all you got. I'm asking you, in that stuff, there's nothing that's related to any other sex traffic, any other people engaged with Epstein in underage sex.
That's correct. To my knowledge, no.
Okay. Let's talk about the witness interviews. 302s of witness interviews. Those are not subject to the court order. Those are not subject to any fictional sealed order for a search warrant. Why aren't you releasing those with the redacted names of the victims?
We are releasing as much as legally allowed. That's why we went back to the courts.
How is that not legally allowed?
Sir, do you know how court orders work? Do you know how protective orders
Actually,
work? Do you know how
Mr.
sealing
Patel,
orders
I was
work?
a real prosecutor for 10 years. I know exactly how
so I was a
court
fake one?
orders. And I want to understand what the court order prevents you from releasing witness statements that the FBI took.
You should know that as a real prosecutor, when the court hand downs a protective order and a motion to seal, the material is sealed unless
So
that
your
judge
testimony
waives
here
it.
is that all of those witness statements are under a court order, a protective order.
We are providing everything we can legally provide.
No, that's not my
Congress has
question.
sent us a
My
subpoena.
question is, why are those witness statements that are not grand jury testimony, that if they were under a protective order are no longer under a protective order, why are they not being released?
How are they not
And
under a protective
Why
order?
are you not going to the court like you did for the grand jury testimony to unseal those records?
The DOJ did go to the court.
No, not on those records. Why
Time
aren't
of
you
the
going?
gentleman.
You just went on grand jury.
Time of the gentleman has expired.
You are hiding the Epstein files,
Time
Mr.
of the gentleman
Patel.
has expired.
You are part of the cover-up.
Can I respond?
Sure can.
Any allegations that I'm a part of a cover-up to protect child sexual trafficking and victims of human trafficking and sexual crimes is patently and categorically false in the work of my
So I hope you will talk to them when they
Gentlemen's
have
time has expired.
requested to speak with you. Because the
Gentlemen's time has
victims have
expired. Gentleman
requested
yields
and you are
back.
not responding to them.
Director, yes or no, is the FBI still spying on parents at school board meetings?
No, sir.
Is the FBI still targeting Catholics?
No, sir.
Is the FBI still spying on President Trump?
I don't believe so.
Is the FBI still censoring Americans?
No, sir.
Is the FBI still targeting Americans for shopping at Cabela's or purchasing Bibles?
Nobody is targeted for their faith.
Is the FBI still targeting Americans who are pro-life?
Nobody is targeting anyone for their beliefs.
Is the FBI still cooking the books on crime data?
The crime data is real.
Is the FBI still purging agents for conservative viewpoints?
No one at the FBI has asked their viewpoints on policy.
Is the FBI still labeling the Betsy Ross flag, the flag of the American Revolution, a hate symbol?
No.
Well, maybe that's why you've been able to, what was the number? 23,000 bad guys you've arrested, a huge increase from the same time period in the previous administration. I think you said 1,400 predators, 4,000 children rescued. Were those effects?
4,700, 35% increase on children rescued.
Yeah. And you got the guy that, Abbey Gate?
We got the Abbey Gate guy.
We had a guy from the 4th District of Ohio who lost his life there serving our country. We appreciate that. Maybe when you're not focused on politics, you can actually do what the FBI is supposed to do. Go get the bad guys, right?
That's what the men and women of the FBI do.
Director, did John Brennan lie to Congress? Let me just read a couple things actually before you answer that. 2 years ago, we had Mr. Brennan in for an interview, and I asked him, how'd you learn about the dossier in December of 2016? Mr. Brennan replied, I received a copy of it from the FBI, and the CIA was very much opposed to having any reference or inclusion of the Steele dossier in the intelligence community assessment. That's what John Brennan told the United States Congress. 7 weeks ago, the Director of National Intelligence told